Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is John Campea, and this is Open Mic. Now, what is Open Mic, and why are we doing Open Mic on a Friday when we normally do a regular episode of the John Campea Show? Well, see, Open Mic is when all we do for the show is take your guys' live questions. Now, normally we don't do Open Mics until Saturday, and on Fridays we have just a regular episode of the John Campea Show. The reason we're doing an Open Mic today is for two reasons. Reason number one, when we had to end the show yesterday, now, you guys may or may not be aware of this, but YouTube has this weird thing that happens. If you do a live stream, if that live stream goes over 2 hours, what happens is once your live stream is done and your video is there now just sitting there on YouTube, YouTube will only show the exact final 2 hours. So if a show goes 2 hours and 10 minutes, you're going to be missing the first 10 minutes of the show. If your show goes 2 hours and 30 minutes, you're going to be missing the first 30 minutes of the show. Now, once the video finishes processing on YouTube servers fully, then the first part of the show will reappear and you'll have the full show. But what's happened lately is that whereas it used to take maybe an hour for the video to finish processing on YouTube servers and those missing first 10 minutes or missing first 20 minutes will then reappear, we started noticing that it would sometimes be 4, 8, sometimes like 48 hours until that first part of the video would reappear. And so made the decision that, okay, I better really stick to just 2 hours then to make sure, you know, the video isn't missing any parts. So anyway, when we hit the 2 hour mark yesterday, we still had a lot of live questions to get through. And so we have a lot of live questions today. So that's one reason why I thought I'd just make today all open mic so we can get through all the questions that we have. The second and equally as important reason is there was just nothing worth talking about as a main topic on the John Campea Show. Like there was a few little things, but there was literally nothing, which happens on some days during the lockdown and, you know, have no new movies coming out. And Project Power didn't go on Netflix until after I was well in bed. So I couldn't even talk about Project Power today. So for that reason, we decided for those two reasons, there wasn't really much to make a main topic today. And on top of that, we had a lot of questions to get through. So we're going to spend today just taking your live questions today. And how do you submit a live question, by the way? Well, it's really rather simple. You can just go to the tip link that's in the top of the description of this video. That's streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. You'll be getting your comment or question on the show here today, and you'll be supporting the show at the same time. And a happy Friday to all of you guys. By the way, big UFC tomorrow night. We got the finale of the trilogy. Daniel Cormier, one of the most decorated UFC fighters of all time, fighting probably the best heavyweight of all time, the current champion, Stipe Miocic. It's going to be a barn burner. I cannot wait. And on top of all that, it's a dynamic card. The whole card is great. So I'm looking forward to that tomorrow night. Anyway, guys, with all that down, let's start getting into the live questions now, shall we? And we're going to pick things up with Jared Leon, who writes, "Hey, John, I just rewatched the episode of Collider with you, Christian, John Schnepp, and the great Mike Rappaport. I remember that episode. How was that experience and whose idea was that? Seems like a Christian idea. Hilarious, though, nonetheless." Yeah, that was an interesting day. So for those of you who don't recall, there was one episode of Movie Talk we did back in the day when I was still at Collider that we had an actor I truly enjoy. It was Michael Rappaport. We had him on the show. And I'll tell you what, he said some of the dumbest, craziest things on that episode that just made me like shake my head and roll my eyes a few times. But I would be lying to you if I didn't tell you that I thought he was incredibly fun to have on there and very entertaining. And, you know, it just kind of highlights that I don't need somebody to just say things I agree with for me to be engaged with them. It's all about how people communicate what they think. And Michael that day definitely said a few things that I thought were crazy, but it's the way he communicates it. I was riveted. It was all sorts of nuts. It was all sorts of crazy. But it was just, yeah, it was entertaining to have him there nonetheless. It was really entertaining to have them. Now, whose idea it was, well, see, Michael Rappaport was actually friends with the owner of Collider, Mark Fernandez. And so Mark asked me, he said, Michael, my buddy Michael, is going to be in town. Would you like to have him on the show? And of course I said, yeah, sure. Because I've always liked his, whenever I see him in something, I always like him. And so Mark actually arranged for him to come in and be on the show. And there it was. The rest was history. All right. Thanks for that, man. Okay. Next up, let's see. The Nightman writes, although Gary Oldman won the Oscar for Darkest Hour, I'm still shocked that the Academy missed his tour de force performance in Tiptoes. He played oh, okay. Twin the Dwarf. Really? Also, have you seen the WAP video? I have no idea what without white Anglo Protestant, I have no idea what a WAP video is. Anyway, that's the movie that has Game of Thrones dude, Peter Dinklage, and Underworld, Kate Beckinsale. That's got, if I'm thinking of the right movie, that's got Peter Dinklage and Kate Beckinsale in it with Oldman, McConaughey. This was in the early 2000s, I think. If I'm remembering the movie right, it was not good. if I'm thinking of the right movie, and sometimes I am not. And sometimes I am not. But if I am thinking of the right movie, that was not an enjoyable movie, if I'm remembering it correctly. So anyway, but maybe I'm thinking of totally the wrong movie. That has been known to happen sometimes. All right, James Germain writes, hey, John, am I the only that noticed, probably meant only one, am I the only one that noticed that the kids from Jojo Rabbit look like the child versions of Simon Pegg and Nick Frost? I've never thought about that. That is an excellent, actually, let me see if I can bring this up here. Hold a second. Jojo Rabbit. Let me see if I can find a picture of the kids of that, because I think that is an amazing. Oh my God, yes. Hold a second. Let me see if I can get this out here properly. Okay, let me see if I can bring this up. Yes. You are 1000% correct. If you showed me this picture and you like dirtied it up a little bit and said, oh, John, have you seen this picture of Simon Pegg and Nick Frost when they were kids? I totally buy it. So yes, you are 1000% correct. Those kids from Jojo Rabbit. By the way, if you haven't seen Jojo Rabbit, watch Taika Waititi's Jojo Rabbit. It's awesome. And those kids were great in it. But you're absolutely right. Those look like kid versions of Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, no doubt. All right, let's move on here. Next up, Ryan Lohner writes, there are no creative differences at Netflix, just like there's no war on Ba Sing Se. I have to imagine they knew exactly what all the big red flags would be after the film. So I'm holding on to hope that this doesn't mean, say, all the heroes are white. Well, I mean, look, you would think that Netflix being, other than maybe with HBO maybe being the exception, Netflix is the best in the world at creating live action dramatic series. Not so much movies, but live action dramatic series. With the possible exception of HBO, nobody does it better than Netflix. When, like yesterday's show, we ran down just a quarter of all the extremely high quality, high octane, award-winning stuff. Netflix knows a thing or two about what will make a good live action series. The guys who did Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I just watched it for the first time a few months ago, and I really enjoyed it. I really liked Avatar: The Last Airbender, the series, not M. Night's movie. They have never done anything in live action. Listen, it's not unfair to say those two guys don't know the first thing about what makes a good live action series any more than I do. I've never made a live action TV series. They have never made a live action TV series. Netflix has. I've got to believe, though, when you've got creators like the guys from Last Airbender and you've got a network like Netflix, initially sitting down to discuss the possibilities of doing this thing together, you would think they would have checked off a lot of the big items. before saying, yes, we will show run this show for Netflix, and Netflix saying, yes, we will have you as our showrunners. You would think that before reaching that point and saying, yeah, let's do this together, that they would have discussed some of the bigger ticket items, right? It is fair to assume that Netflix and the creators of Avatar: The Last Airbender would have discussed, okay, are we going to make all the heroes in the movie, in the show, white? That is a huge thing. I do not believe for 1 second that that conversation didn't happen before they agreed to do the show together, right? I'm sure there's a million things that weren't discussed, but something like, hey, are we going to have all the heroes white? That's something that would have come up in conversation number 1, especially considering with what happened with the M. Night version of the story, right? That would have been conversation number 1. You will never convince me that the Avatar creators agreed to work with Netflix and Netflix agreed to work with the Avatar creators before ever even talking about whether we were going to make all the heroes white like M. Night did in his movie. There is no chance in hell that that's the case. All right? So I don't believe that is one of the issues. I got to believe that right from the beginning, they came to an agreement on what the answer to that question was. But once you get into the process of developing the show, once you move beyond all the big obvious hurdles that they would have talked about right at the beginning before entering into the agreement, that's when you get into the 1,000 other issues as you start to get into the creative process that weren't covered when you first sat down to have your first discussions. And I think it is within those parameters. And again, I'm speculating. My belief would be, though, it is within those issues that Netflix probably started to develop some concerns and saying, hey, guys, what you're doing here may work fine for an animated show, but trust us, we know what works in live action, and we're telling you that won't necessarily translate as well into live action. Or the guys from Avatar saying, hey, we know Netflix, you normally do this, but we really feel like this element is important to what Avatar is. And maybe that normally wouldn't translate well into live action, but we really feel it's important. I think it's going to be one of those issues. And I got to agree with something Aaron Cummings said yesterday. I think these guys, obviously they're the showrunners, they have tons of influence over it, but they don't have final say because they're not the network. They should have stayed on the project, asserted all the influence on it that they could, and get it under their belt and get some live action experience and then move forward. I don't know. It's tough to say. It's one that's still being debated today. Even after the 24 news hour cycle lifespan of it has come and gone, it's still being debated a lot. I'm still seeing a lot of people discussing this and debating it. And again, I just feel like it's come down to a thing of the guys from Avatar, as they were developing it, they were starting to get into some things that the people at Netflix knew wouldn't work well in live action as opposed to animation. Remember, these guys have never done live action before, not on a scale like this. So, but again, I don't believe for a second that it's an issue of, oh, it took us 2 years to figure out that Netflix wanted an all white heroes and the Avatar guys didn't. There's no way. That is conversation number 1 that they had 2 years ago. And if they didn't, then the Avatar guys are idiots for not having that conversation on day 1, and the Netflix guys are idiots for not having that conversation on day 1. And I tend to believe that neither the Avatar guys nor Netflix are idiots. So I got to believe they had that conversation already. Anyway, okay, let's move on here. Next up, we've got David Atkins writes, yo, Duke Von Filthy, I like that. Wanted to say thanks for the Net Objects recommendation. Oh, that's right. You wrote in asking about a web development tool, and I mentioned this old program I used to use when I worked for a web development company called Net Objects Fusion. It was great back in the day, and apparently they're still around. Anyway, like an idiot, I actually realized I had a copy of another web design app called Zara. Zara was actually around back in the day. Also, I remember Zara Web Designer was around when I was using NetObjects Fusion. We're going back over a decade now. So it's crazy that's still around too. Backed up somewhere else, so decided to re-download it, but thanks anywho. Well, hey, good, man. And I hope you're able to put to good use. Hopefully it's not outdated. Hopefully it'll still work with modern web standards and stuff like that. So just make sure that it will still work and not break your links or anything like that. All right. David Atkins also writes, over under 7.5%. Either Bucky or Falcon have a romantic relationship with Sharon Carter in Falcon and Winter Soldier series. Also, you jokingly whispered, "It's Happy's baby" on your previous Infinity War video. Made me crack up. Don't think Tony would be too happy about that. No, it's true. Hey, listen, 7.5%. I'll take the over on that. Yeah, I'll take the over on that. Listen, all showrunners, including the best ones, have a hard time resisting the urge to put a romantic relationship in their show, even when a romantic relationship is not what's needed in their show. So, and it's not like either one of them would be stealing Cap's girl. Cap left her and decided to go back to Peggy, which is what everybody wanted. I wanted him to end up with Sharon. Bygones. Anyway, so 7.5% that either Falcon or Winter Soldier gets involved with Sharon. Considering the fact that showrunners have a hard time resisting, I got to go way over 7.5. I'm not necessarily saying it's over 50%, but 7.5%, oh yeah, I'll take those odds. I'll take those odds definitely. Because even the best comic book storytellers have a hard time resisting putting an unnecessary romantic relationship in something. So I'll go over the 7.5. Again, not saying it will happen, but 7.5, yeah, I'll take over. The Topher Rocks writes, over under 20%, we see Channing Tatum as Gambit in the MCU. Listen, I'm going to say something that not everybody will agree with. I still believe there is a chance. I still believe there is a chance that Channing Tatum ends up as Gambit. But I also believe that chance is under 20%. It's unlikely. It's really unlikely at this point. Now, there was some talk, including from Simon Kinberg at one point, after the Fox merger into Disney, that the Channing Tatum Gambit thing was still on the table. Nobody said they were still moving forward with it, but they said that's still on the table. So I believe there is still a possibility it happens, but to be honest with you, it is quite unlikely, and I will take under 20% on that. All right, Luke1234 writes, tech question. Why do you use SLR, DSLR cameras, which usually have a 30-minute record time limit as opposed to a camcorder with unlimited record time? After all, wouldn't a camcorder save you some money? Well, that's a good question. It's a great question. Let me bring something up here. Okay, so we're going to go... Okay, I will show you the cameras that I use. I use a camera called the Sony A6400. Okay, I'll show you an image of it. Actually, I have several of them here in the studio. Here's an image of it. I have several of these cameras in the studio. Now, this is not a DSLR. This is a mirrorless camera, there are fundamental differences between DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. I'll let you go on to Google and look up those differences. But one of the things about the Sony A6400s and a lot of mirrorless cameras is that there is no 30-minute recording limit. Because I used to run into that problem. Back in the early days of when I was doing the John Campea Show, after I left Collider and I was just starting up the John Campea Show, my main camera is a wonderful camera that I still have on the shelf over there. It's the Canon 7D Mark II. Now it's an older camera now, but it is a beautiful, beautiful camera, especially at the time. So I had the Canon 7D Mark II. It wasn't a cheap camera either, but it had a 30-minute limit. Not only was it a 30-minute recording limit, it had a 30-minute time on limit. So I was never recording to the camera. I had the HDMI cable coming out of the camera into the computer. So the camera wasn't recording. The computer was recording. But even then, the camera had a 30-minute time on time limit. So what I would have to do during the shows is I would have to keep an eye on the clock. And once it hit about 25 minutes, I would have to lean over my computer. Some of you might remember this. I would have to lean over my monitor and click the shutter button on the camera, because clicking the shutter button kind of reset the 30-minute limit. And every once in a while, I would forget to reach over the monitor and click that button. And I'd be doing the show, and all of a sudden the screen would go black because the camera would turn off. And then I would have to take about a minute to go turn the camera off, turn it back on, all that kind of stuff. But a mirrorless camera like this one, that's not a problem. A camcorder is cheaper. And I've got a Canon Vixia G40. It's a really good camcorder. I don't know if you can buy them anymore, but it's great. We used them a lot in the in the mid AMC days. Our main cameras in the mid AMC days were these Canon Vixia G40s. You can probably find them on Craigslist or Amazon or something like that. And they're great for the money. They are. The big problem though with them, with camcorders, is that unlike DSLRs or these mirrorless cameras, they don't have interchangeable lenses. And these lenses are what really gives... I think one of the things you'll notice that while my show may be worse than a lot of other YouTube shows, the image of my show is one of the best. And because I'm able to not only have these Sony a6400 cameras, I have these really wonderful Sigma Prime lenses on it that creates this great effect, very crystal clear, gives you nice depth of field, all that kind of stuff. These are things that you basically, there are workarounds and ways to do it, but basically speaking, you can't do those with camcorders. You just cannot, generally speaking, and depending on what your purposes are, can't get the kind of image that I want for a show like this. For other purposes, camcorders are great. And you're right, they're lower expense options. But I use a mirrorless camera that's called the Sony a6400s. You can get them for about $800 a piece. So they've come down in price a little bit. And then you can get these Sigma lenses for about $300 a piece. And they're fabulous and wonderful. And but yes, you can get some lower cost camcorders that will do a pretty good job. I just want to give my audience the best image possible. My audience, they honor me by coming and watching the show. So I want to give them the best possible viewing experience that I can. So I invest a little bit of money into the camera. So that's what I do there. Anyway, hopefully you found that a little bit informative. All right, let's move on here. Next up, James Hoffman writes, I watched episode 2 of Star Trek Lower Decks. So far, I'm really liking it. I love the intro. It pays homage to The Next Generation. It has a lot of Star Trek references and in-jokes. It does not take itself too seriously, and it has heart and humor. I only wish it were live action. Here, I gotta admit, I have not watched an episode of Star Trek Lower Decks yet. I'll be honest, I thought it looked terrible. Now, I'm a big fan of the new CBS Star Trek stuff. I like Discovery very much. And I liked Picard season 1 very much. So it's not like I'm anti-CBS Star Trek, not at all. But I watched the previews for Lower Decks and I thought it looked terrible. It didn't even make me grin. I'll probably give it a shot at some point. And it's funny, Robert Meyer Burnett came over yesterday and we were talking about, he had just watched it. Robert, obviously, he hates anything that's not original Star Trek, but he hates this new Star Trek thing. And he said it's terrible. But then again, he doesn't like Discovery or Picard either, and I do. So I'll have to give Lower Decks a shot at some point. I'm just saying, I didn't like the preview. So far, Robert doesn't like it, but that's to be expected. I'll give it a shot at some point and I'll see what I think about it. But yeah, man, I did not like the previews at all. Anyway, but I'm glad you're enjoying it, man. That's the important thing. Darth Hobbs writes, hey, John, you're wrong on the greatest comeback, a hockey comeback, in my opinion. It was last year's Sharks versus Knights. The Sharks were down 3-0 in the third period and came back to win in overtime. Pavelski cracked his head on the ice and we got a 5-minute major, won in OT. Yeah, but they weren't down 3-0 with just 3 minutes left in the game. The problem, though, with the Maple Leaf comeback is that it was all for nothing. Because then in the 5th and deciding game of the series, so Toronto won that game in the greatest hockey comeback of all time, which forced a game 5, a final deciding game 5, and Toronto lost. So they were out of the playoffs. So even though that Toronto Maple Leaf comeback was the greatest comeback of all time in hockey, it is rendered irrelevant because they didn't end up winning the series. And if you don't end up winning the series, then who cares that it doesn't matter if you came back from 10-0 with 3 minutes to go. If you don't win the series, it's irrelevant. So what would have been the title of greatest hockey comeback of all time is rendered moot. So you can't count the Maple Leaf one as that anymore because they eventually lost the series. I still don't think the Sharks Knight ones is that one either, but it would have been the Maple Leaf one, but they lost the next game, so it gets thrown out the window. Unfortunately, the Toronto Maple Leafs continue to suck. All right, double crit rights, 1 of 2. I finally saw Old Guard. I really liked Old Guard a lot. My only major gripe is the music. Other than that, it's a great B-tier action movie. Both Charlize and Kiki were great, I agree. And the guys were solid too. Also, didn't think the villain was too bad, despite being cartoonishly evil. Yeah, I agree. That, to me, that main villain was if I had to point to one weak point in the movie, I would say the villain was the weak point in the movie. I agree with you on that. That said, I saw a funny observation on Double Toasted. Merrick has a mini army providing security. He can fund soldiers to bait and kill immortals, yet we see only one lady scientist working for him. Doesn't seem like he's putting money into the right places. Well, I mean, I think it was safe for us to assume he had armies of scientists working. That's a pretty big building he was in, right? So I think it's okay for us to safely assume he had a lot of scientists working for him. They just didn't need to be on screen. We needed the soldiers there because they were cannon fodder. We needed the soldiers on there for the immortals to kill. But the scientists, yeah, they saved a little bit of money and kept them off screen. It's not a bad observation. All right, John Klobuchar writes, have you ever seen that video that Ryan Reynolds posted where he completely roasts celebrities on Twitter regarding COVID-19? No, and I follow Ryan Reynolds, so I am, but I'm not familiar with it. I'm going to have to go see it. The dude is one of the funniest guys on social media, if not the funniest guy on social media. Like he's amazing. So I will have to go and check that out. Thank you for putting that on my radar, John. I will check that out. All right. An anonymous viewer writes, there are some allegations regarding Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg. It's not impossible, but the sources aren't reliable. I detest child abduction, but believe these conspiracy theories not solving anything. I pay no attention to that nonsense. Just ignore that bullshit. Anyway, Tomo writes, Cineworld is finally opening in Scotland, open in England already, and the only movie showing is Tenet, which is booked for the 29th of August. Cannot wait for my nachos, which I get 25% off instead of 10, as I've been an unlimited member for a year. Yeah, I mean, listen, we are entering into a very interesting period of time where the theaters are supposedly reopening. I mean, there are many theaters around the world that are already reopened, but now they're not just going to be reopened. We're going to get a lot more theaters reopening, like AMC Regal is supposed to be opening in America here this coming week, all that kind of stuff. Not in all places in the United States, because some states are by law keeping the theaters closed, which is fine if that's what they feel they need to do. But we're getting theaters reopening, but we're supposedly getting big new movies coming. To a lesser degree, we're getting the new Russell Crowe film Unhinged, which already opened in some places around the world. But we're getting Unhinged opening on the 21st. We've got New Mutants, supposedly, finally, after years and years of waiting. New Mutants is apparently opening in like 2 weeks, guys. 2 weeks from today, New Mutants is supposed to open. I don't think we've ever gotten this close to an actual release date for New Mutants without it being moved. So apparently in 2 weeks, New Mutants is opening. And then, of course, Tenet. Tenet at the end of August in many international markets, on September 3rd here in the United States. I think a lot of people are like me in that I'm just trying not to think about it. Because during this pandemic, which has been so woefully and brutally handled here in the United States, it's a joke how badly it has been handled and managed here in the United States compared to other places around the world. New Zealand, which hasn't had a new case of COVID in over a month. Anyway, why other people can handle it competently and this frickin' country can't is beyond me, but there we are. But ever since the pandemic started, we've had a couple of things that, oh, movie theaters are going to open at this date, and then they don't. Oh, this movie is going to come out on this date, and then it doesn't. And so here we are now. We're getting closer to when New Mutants is supposed to open, that Tenet is supposed to open, and I'm just trying not to think about it. I'll be honest with you. It's impossible to not think about it, but I'm trying to not think about it because we've seen this happen already in the last few months, that we're going to get a date and then it goes away. But if the theaters open, and if they do it safely, and if these new movies do open, and if they do okay business, these are a lot of ifs, by the way. Have you noticed how many ifs we have in there? That's a lot of ifs. But if this and if that, and if the movies do open and if they do okay, we could see a fundamental shift in what's going on with the movies in the next 8 to 12 weeks. Because, me and Aaron talked about on the show yesterday, but me and Robert talked about this last night, was that I really believe if New Mutants comes out and does a little bit of business, and if Tenet comes out and does a little bit of business, I think you're going to see some movies that got moved and pushed to 2021, which is now drastically overpacked. 2021, as of right, 2021 was already full before the pandemic hit and other movies started to jump to 2021. I believe if New Mutants and Tenet open to some okay business, I believe you're going to see some movies that jump to 2021 jump back into 2020. If they see, hey, we can get a fairly open theatrical schedule and have the theaters mostly to ourselves in, say, September, late September. But again, there's a lot of ifs. So I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see, man. I hope you're able to go to those theaters and enjoy yourselves a movie, Tomo. All right, Special K writes. Let's see. Greetings from the UK. I got my cinema tickets for Back to the Future for this weekend. That's awesome. And Tenet for the 27th. You lucky dog. You got Tenet tickets. Can't wait to get back into the cinema. Hopefully the US film fan community can join us soon. Everyone stay safe and stay healthy. Yep. And if everybody had stayed safe and healthy right from the beginning, we'd be back in movie theaters already. Anyway, can you tell I'm really getting bitter about the way this country has managed the pandemic? Can you tell I'm starting to get bitter about it? Anyway, first of all, I'm super thrilled for our film-loving brothers and sisters in the UK and in other countries around the world that are, that are going to be able to get back into the theaters. Please, though, understand wherever you live in the world, going into the theaters is like going in anywhere else. It's like going into your grocery store. It's like going in anything else. Go in, but go in being safe. Be smart, right? Take the proper precautions. If you can do it in the grocery store, you can do it in a movie theater. I believe a movie theater is actually safer than a grocery store. And if you take the right precautions, I personally believe you're good to go. But please don't be an idiot. And on top of that, don't tolerate idiots. Don't tolerate people threatening your safety. Talk to theater management. If you see violations of safety procedures, talk to theater management. Don't let other people ruin something for everybody else. Anyway, that's kind of my thought on that. Anyway, let's move on here. Next up, Captain Worse, I like the name, writes, "Hey crew, I just want to say, great show. Keep my days going better. Even when today I show up to work and it was my day off. It was my day off. I've done that before. I saw early the new trailer of The Devil All the Time with Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson, Jason Patrick. Is that his name is in? Anyway, Jason Patrick. I want to see a different performance. Thoughts? Yeah, I saw the trailer for Devil All the Time. I didn't love it. Now, I'm sure Tom Holland is going to be great in it. I am sure Robert Pattinson's going to be great in it. I'm sure his name is Jason Patrick, right? Let's assume it is. I assume Jason Patrick's going to be great in it. The performances all looked fine, right? But I feel like I've seen this movie. You know what it felt like to me? The trailer. Now, the movie might be the greatest movie of all time. I'm just talking about the trailer. I haven't seen the movie. The movie might be great. But the trailer to me felt like a poor man's There Will Be Blood. Didn't it? Come on, didn't it feel a little like There Will Be Blood? It's like, oh, surprise, surprise. The preacher's the bad guy. That's never been done before. I don't know. I I'm sure the performances will be stellar, and hopefully the movie will be fantastic. The trailer, I gotta say, did nothing for me. The trailer just looked cliche, been there 1,000 times. Ooh, big surprise, this happens. I don't know. For me, it just didn't work. But I've read online, a lot of people were very impressed with the trailer, and that's great. It's all subjective. I just got to admit, even though I'm a huge Tom Holland fan, I'm a big Robert Pattinson fan when he's working out. But I am a big Robert Pattinson fan, and I think their performances will be top notch. Again, even though the trailer did work for a lot of people, the trailer overall just didn't work for me. Again, I got that poor man's there will be blood feeling from it, but I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Hopefully, it'll be awesome. All right. Lewis R. writes, watching AMC theaters open, but knowing because you're in a hot spot, South Florida, that they won't open near you anytime soon hurts. Yeah, but I get it. Again, I never hold a government responsible, or I never hold a grudge against a government taking steps that they believe are for the safety and well-being of their people, even when it's stuff I disagree with. And so you're in the same boat as me. I live in California. The AMC theaters, as far as I know, will not be opening anytime soon around me. So like I got my AMC Burbank 16 up the street from me. I don't think that's going to be opening anytime soon. So, Robert and I were talking last night that, come August 28th, 2 weeks from now, and Aaron was talking about this too, we might get in a car and make a road trip to Nevada, make the 4.5-hour drive, go into Nevada where the theaters will be open and maybe have to go see New Mutants at a movie theater in Nevada, provided that AMC theaters there's a great AMC theater right there in Las Vegas, provided their AMC theater will take the proper safety precautions, which I'll check on first. But if they do, we think we're probably going to take a road trip to go watch it because it's not going to be opening here. So I feel you, man. I feel you. But it is, it is what it is. Hopefully, a year from now, we're going to be looking back on this and saying, whoo, aren't we glad that we're not in that time anymore? But for now, we just got to deal with it. All right. The Mischievous Gremlin writes, hey, John, how's your day going? My day is going great so far. Thank you, sir. By the way, I'll let you guys know, my day is going so good, partially because yesterday, I want to share this with you because I'm kind of excited about it. I'm actually kind of excited about this. You guys know that I have been since the beginning of the year, I have been working on a documentary. And I don't know if it's going to be awesome or if it's going to be a total bag of shit. I don't know. I'm going to make the best that I can. But yesterday, we shot our final 2 interviews. Yesterday, I think we started shooting around January. So February, March, April, May, June, July, 7 months later, I think we shot our first interview in January. Anyway, here we are 7 months later. Yesterday, we shot 2 interviews yesterday, the final 2 interviews, and we are now done. As far as shooting our principal content, we're done. And Jonathan and I, fact checker Jonathan, who's also working as the editor on this movie, we have been working every day. We get together from 2 to 6 every day, doing post-production on it. And in 3 weeks, we're doing our first focus group test. We're getting a group of 5 to 6 people that I don't know. Somebody else is arranging it for me. And we're going to be showing them a rough cut of the documentary. Hopefully we'll have it ready, a rough cut ready in 3 weeks. We're going to show a rough cut of the documentary to our first group of people. And I'm very excited. I'm also scared as hell because I was talking to Ann and I was like, oh, damn, what if these people watch it and I hear back, yeah, they all hate it and thought it was the most boring thing ever. I'm like, it's going to crush me. And, Ann being the wise girl she is, she's like, but you need to know. If it's terrible and boring and these people, you get a group of people who don't know you watch it and they all come back saying they didn't enjoy it and they didn't like it and it wasn't enjoyable. It'll be hard to hear, but if that's the case, you do need to know. And it's like, yep, you're right. That's why you do focus screenings, not just to have everybody come back and tell you they love it. If it sucks, you got to know that it sucks. Anyway, I'm going off on that, but I'm very excited. We finally shot our final 2 interviews yesterday. So progress. We're getting there. I can see the end is in sight. Anyway, getting back to your question, mischievous gremlin, I just feel that anime type series made into live action movies are just not good. Dragon Ball Evolution was horrible, and I don't know if any anime type series could ever work as a live action movie. Listen, you're not wrong. Listen, you and I are not the only ones to think that. Because, listen, there is a difference between the mediums, right? From printed page of a comic book to the big screen moving images to live action medium versus animation medium. They are different. They have different strengths and weaknesses, and you can do things in a certain medium that you can't do in another, and vice versa. And so, whether you're looking at the train wreck that was the Death Note movie, or you look at M. Night's Avatar, or personally, I didn't mind Ghost in the Shell, to be honest with you. I thought it was okay. Not great, but I thought Ghost in the Shell was okay. But still, not a triumph by any stretch of the imagination. You do have to start to wonder, can you actually really, and your Dragon Ball example, can you really translate anime into live action? Because you have to make a lot of changes for it to work in the live action environment. And do those changes subvert the original material? Don't know. They have to do things for the same thing for comic books into comic book movies. You have to make changes from the source material, but it does work. Can you do the same thing with anime? I don't know. Because to be honest with you, I don't believe, like Avatar: The Last Airbender, I don't believe you can just take Avatar: The Last Airbender and just do a direct, fateful translation to live screen and actually have it be good. I think it works great in the animated form. I was so happy that I finally got caught up and I watched that thing a few months ago, and I really enjoyed Avatar. Would a direct live action translation work? I don't know if it does. Hey, Katara, what you doing down there? I mean, that works in animation. Does that work in live action? I don't know. I don't think so. So it's going to have to be adapted. It's going to have to make some changes to take the heart of that story and then make it palatable in a live action environment. Can you do that with anime as easily as you can do it with, say, comic book material? I don't know, but I haven't seen it done really successfully yet. I haven't seen it done with a lot of success yet. And if there have been some successes, I think it's fair to say the failures have outnumbered the successes. So the bottom line is, I don't know. It will be interesting to see. All right, let's move on here. Thanks a lot for writing that in, Mischievous Gremlin. Next up, Paul Cree writes, "Hey, John, one of two. About Disney Plus and nothing new. I don't think they need to. Target is families. My kids love it. Anyways, finding something library is immense. The library is immense. Their library is very, very big. Kids don't care about new. They just want plenty of it. I'd say in my home, it's the most important streamer. Why Mulan baffles me and why I haven't bought Trolls. They don't know about release dates, but peer pressure is real. Friends watched it, so mine want to. If Disney markets Mulan as available now, I'll crack because they'll just be going on about seeing it." Yeah, see, listen, I recognize that, and I've talked about on the show, Disney Plus has a tremendous library. The library is great. But that can't be the only card you have to play. You need great original content as well. You need both. Because Otherwise, all Disney Plus is going to be is a repository that will appeal a lot to families, but Disney Plus wants to appeal to more than just families. Disney Plus wants to appeal to people like me and a lot of other people who tune in to watch the original content. And it can't be an either or. It's got to be a both and. And as somebody who doesn't have kids, I can tell you I'm getting very frustrated with Disney Plus. And I'm hearing a lot of people are getting very frustrated with Disney Plus. And you can't even just blame it all on the pandemic, because they had a lot of months in between when they released Mandalorian before the pandemic really shut things down. There was months and they didn't have anything. Now, granted, Netflix is much more established, but Netflix puts out 30 new pieces of original content every month. Disney had put out one high-profile thing and then a bunch of lower budget. This isn't going to attract anybody, but it's there. Just quantity. It's just quantity. Tons and tons of filler. And while they will maintain audiences like yourself and many others who it's great for families to have that library, that's great. I believe they are in danger of losing some people. And we've already seen a lot of people unsubscribe because they don't have that original content. And I really think they need to look. If Disney is saying that Disney Plus is their main thing moving forward, then start treating it like it. Start getting original content as a priority. Because I have now paid over $70 for Disney Plus, and all I've gotten out of it is Mandalorian and a viewing of Hamilton. For my 7 months, 10 months of subscribing to Disney Plus, 9 or 10 months, whatever it is, what have I gotten? I have gotten Mandalorian and I got Hamilton. That's not value. That's just not value. People like me need more than that. And so I would propose that, number one, Paul, you're right. For a lot of people, just the library is absolutely good enough. But I would also propose that it's not an either or. It needs to be a both and. That we have great library and we have great original content. Fresh original content that you can't get anywhere else. You know what I mean? And I really think they need to get a move on, because they're closing in on being open for a year. Right? We're like 2.5 months away from it being a year that they've been launched. And we got Mandalorian. And Mandalorian's great. I love Mandalorian. You know I loved Mandalorian. But I don't know. I get a little bit frustrated. All right. Cody Spear writes, Long time listener, first time watching live and contributing. Oh, I'm sure this is probably from yesterday's show. Rise of Skywalker is a massive guilty pleasure for me. While the story is a derailed dumpster fire, I absolutely love the Kylo and Palpatine imagery, particularly the opening. Hey, listen, I say this all the time. Now, we all know I didn't like Rise of Skywalker. I was quite disappointed in the film. But, it's the same thing for me with the prequels. I hate the prequels. But I love that there are people who love it, right? I didn't like Rise of Skywalker, but I love that there are a number of people, lots of people, who really like the Rise of Skywalker. Actually, let me do this for a second. Rise of Skywalker, Rotten Tomatoes. Let me just look this up here quick. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker on Rotten Tomatoes. Guess what? Verified audience score. These are people that Rotten Tomatoes has verified through their Fandango app, actually bought tickets and went to go see The Rise of Skywalker. All right. This is the verified score. 86% of the audience liked it. 86%. That's not small. So you're not alone, man. There are a lot of people who like The Rise of Skywalker. I am not one of them. Clearly, I'm not one of them, but that's okay. I love the fact that I want people to enjoy movies, even if they're movies I don't like. So if you liked it, man, awesome. And listen, even as somebody who really didn't like the movie, there's things in it too. Like, just like I don't like the prequels, there are things in the prequels I appreciate and enjoy. And there are moments in Rise of Skywalker that I quite enjoy. And if those moments and more are enough for you to go, I really enjoyed this movie, then good on you, man. Good on you. And don't let people like me not liking it take that enjoyment away from you. All right. Thanks a lot for that, Cody. All right. Next up, an anonymous viewer writes, hey, John and Aaron. Aaron is obviously not here anymore. I told you we still had a lot of questions to go yesterday. It may be just me, but sometimes I feel like I'm about to rob a bank when I put on a mask before getting out of the car to go into the store. Not that I would do that. Have a good one. You know what? I don't really feel like that anymore. But I remember fact checker Jonathan, he was over here one day. This is near in the, the first month of the lockdown. And he was telling me the exact same thing. Now, this is like back in April. He's like, dude, I felt like I was about to hold up the place. I was going into a 7-Eleven. I put on this mask and walking into a store, like you just feel really shady doing that. But yeah, I mean, but as time has passed, we're now in August. I no longer feel weird about that anymore because it's just part of normal everyday life now, unfortunately. But I see where you're coming from, dude. I do. All right. Daniel Haygood writes, I live in downtown Chicago where AMC has 4 locations. Their biggest one has no date for reopening. The IMAX location will open for Tenet, and the 2 dine-in locations will open before the end of the month. I'm scared and excited all at once. Again, first of all, I don't know why they'd be opening some AMCs in the same city, but not another one. That's like, if they're all in the same city, why not? Anyway, that's a question for AMC. Again, I think it's all about how being in the pandemic, there are ways you can conduct yourselves in the pandemic. And of course, if you watched the John Campea Show the other day, AMC theaters in particular put out a press release talking about all their safety procedures, including these new air filters they put in for the air in the theaters, the hand sanitizing, the mask rules, the social distancing, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I think if people go, if the venue has the right safety procedures, and then if the public, the patrons who go in respect and follow those procedures and safety protocols, I think we're okay. Again, I've always said you can't eliminate the risk, right? The moment I step outside my door, there is some element of risk. But we can all be smart and minimize the risk, right? Like, look, every time you get in a car and drive, there is a risk you'll be in a car accident. But if you wear a seatbelt, if you drive the speed limit, if you honor and obey the rules of the road, and most people do that, you minimize the chances that you'll be in an accident. So there's still a risk, but I believe if we can minimize the risk, mitigate the risk, then I think we can be okay. I'm no doctor. I'm just giving my opinion. But hopefully the theaters do the right things and the people going into the theaters do the right things, and then it'll be good for everybody. So here's hoping, fingers crossed. Anyway, Kevin Kamaki writes, love you and your show, John. Thank you so much, Kevin. I appreciate that, dude. It's always nice when somebody just wants to write in and say something pleasant like that, man. I appreciate that very much, Kevin. And I always see your name popping up. So thank you, my friend. All right. Kyle Lobby writes, or Loby. I'm not quite sure how you'd pronounce that. I'm so excited AMC's are reopening. I had to spread the love. Just ordered tickets to see Empire Strikes Back on the 20th and Inception IMAX on the 22nd. We'll be getting a New Mutants ticket as soon as they go on sale. And yeah, New Mutants tickets. So you clearly live somewhere in the United States where the theaters are allowed to open. I'm not going to lie, I'm jealous. And I hate you just a little bit. But I think that is great. And of course, 15-cent movie opening day. It was fabulous. $5 for movies like Empire Strikes Back. Fabulous. Hopefully you'll be able to get in there and see New Mutants when those tickets go on sale. And hopefully you're going to be able to see Tenet. Well, if Tenet does indeed keep that September 3rd release date, fingers crossed. I would say though, pardon me, I think the tickets are going to go fast. I think tickets are going to go fast. Now, I'm not saying total sellouts in the first 24 hours. I'm not saying that. But, you know, we've had this discussion for a while around here that there are a lot of people who believe that no one's going to go back to the theaters when they reopen. I have made the argument that, listen, the moment restaurants reopened, people flew to the restaurants. Some safely, some unsafely. But I believe when the theaters open, not everybody, but I think you're going to see a lot of people want to get back to the movies. They want to get back. Just look at what's happening at drive-in theaters right now. Like, drive-in theaters are playing all these old movies and they are selling out. Ann and I tried to get tickets for a movie at the drive-in like 3 weeks in advance and it was all sold out. I think when theaters open again, especially with limited capacity, I do think the tickets are going to go relatively fast. Maybe not. Maybe it'll be a ghost town in there. But with the limited number of tickets, I think they may go fast. Anyway, I hope you have a good experience, Kyle. And please be safe, my friend. All right, Stubble McShave writes, something that separates The Rock and Ryan Reynolds from a lot of other actors is that they are marketing machines. They really are. I mean, The Rock and Ryan Reynolds, these are two dudes who know how to self-promote and use social media really effectively. Like, even if Ryan Reynolds wasn't a huge movie star, he's one of the best social media guys in the world. And Dwayne Johnson's really great at that too. Anyway, both often use alternative marketing channels. They go beyond what is expected of a normal actor in their promotion. This surely adds value. It really does. Listen, if I'm a production company and I'm looking at hiring The Rock or Ryan Reynolds, the price tag is expensive, but you know what I know is going to happen? Those guys are going to promote my movie. They're going to go above and beyond. Like a lot of and I don't blame actors for this. Do what you're contractually obligated to do, and you don't have to do any more. I don't blame anybody for that. Most actors will do the bare minimum what is required of them to promote the movie. We'll show up for the press junket. We'll do some press interviews, blah, blah, blah. But that's all I'm required to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Ryan Reynolds and The Rock and a few other movie stars, when they're in a movie, they bust their asses to do everything they can to promote that project. Everything they can do. So if I'm a producer, I may have to pay a little bit more or a lot more for Dwayne The Rock Johnson or Ryan Reynolds. But one of the things that would be in my mind is the fact that these guys are going to promote the hell out of my movie. Like, they're not just going to do the press junkets. They're going to use their social media with their tens of millions of followers. They're going to talk this thing up. They're going to make jokes about it. They're going to drag some of their other celebrity buddies into the gag. They're going to do so much to promote my movie that maybe it becomes worth the extra couple of $1,000,000. It's a great observation, Stubble. It's a great observation because I think you're absolutely right. Okay, next up. Highly Flavored and Favored writes, hey, John and Aaron, love the show. Thanks to you pushing, I finally took a step and launched a YouTube cooking show. That is awesome. Thanks for all you do. Eternally grateful. Dude, that is great. I think everybody, listen, regardless of who or what we are, everybody has a little bit of a creative part of their soul. And I think it's important, even if you don't do creativity as a living, I think it's important as individuals that we exercise that creative part of our brain and our soul. And if that means writing a blog about cameras, whether that means doing a YouTube channel about cooking, whether that means writing a book, whether that means shooting a short film with your friends on your iPhone or whatever, I think it's really important that everybody gets involved to some degree, even if it's something really small, gets involved in doing something creative. I just think it's good for us as a whole. And I love the fact that you took the step and you're actually doing it. So that's great to hear. And thank you for sharing that news with us, man. All right. Bojax writes, to add to Aaron's point yesterday about showrunners, this is what Damon Lindelof said he did for The Watchmen. He surrounded himself with people he respected and valued their thoughts in order to make the best show possible. Listen, and yeah, Aaron did talk about that with really effective, good showrunners, but it's not just true of showrunners. You know, whether you're the president of a company or the captain of a team or a general or whatever it is, the key is surround yourself with talented people. That's the key. Recognize when somebody's really talented and then put them in a position to maximize that talent. That's the key. Listen, the reason we were able to take AMC And listen, don't just think, well, you had the brand name AMC, so it was going to work regardless. No. Because you know what? Regal was as big of a name, and Regal tried for years to get a living, breathing, growing, active YouTube channel going, and they were never able to. That's why they tried to hire me once. Regal tried to hire me away from AMC once. When I told them what it would take to hire me away, because admittedly it was steep what I was telling them it would take to hire me away, the negotiations stopped. But there's a reason why we at AMC were able to create a living, thriving YouTube channel that grew and grew and grew and grew, and a great theater chain like Regal simply fell on its face constantly trying to get something going. And I think the big difference was that my constant, and you could ask my old boss about this, my constant focus was creating a good show, yes, but my real constant focus was always making sure that we were making our talent as happy as we were able to make them. And we had very limited money. But also trying to get resources to get the most talented people, because we needed talented people. And the reason AMC thrived and grew was not because of the genius of John Campea. It thrived and grew because at least one thing that John Campea did know how to do was to identify talented people and get them in positions to maximize their talent. And so, like, one of the main things that I did, one of my very first priorities when AMC gave me the green light that we could start making video content, and it took me a while to convince them to let me move forward with creating video content. But the very first thing I did, and I told them my number one priority, was we need Dennis Zen. I had worked with Dennis Zen at a previous place. I was floored by this guy's analytical thinking, his creativity, his reliability, his professionalism. He's just the man. Dennis Zen is just the man. And I'm very proud to call him a friend of mine. But I remember that was like a first priority. This is going back to the beginning of the AMC days. And I was like, we need that person. Then once we got Dennis, it became then we moved on to what's the next person we need. And we put that person in place. And then once John Schnepp and I met each other and did our first video together, I was like, this works. We need John Schnepp, or we need Christian Harloff, or whatever it was. And I think just that's the same with showrunners. Showrunners need to surround themselves with a great writer's room, get great directors involved. I mean, that's the key to leading any kind of a team. It's to not being able to do it all yourself, but to surround yourself with really talented people. And so I think you're right on the money with that, Bojax. Okay, anyway, Willow writes, I do find the complaints about Sarah Paulson being too old to play Ratched to be a bit dumb. They had an actress who's several years younger than Christopher Plummer play his mother in Knives Out. Really? Was she younger than Christopher Plummer? I had no idea. It's what makeup and hairstyling is for. I didn't even know that. I do remember thinking, wow, the Christopher Plummer character has a mom in the movie? Okay. You know what? I'm going to have to go and look that up. I have a buddy of mine who was very involved with Knives Out. I got to go and ask them, is that true? Was that actress actually younger than Christopher Plummer? If that's true, that is a great piece of trivia to have, Willow. Thank you for, I got to go see if that's actually a fact. If it is, that's crazy. That's good to know. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Initial D's writes, oh, dude tips in $23. Thank you so much, Initial, for supporting the channel on that level, dude. I seriously appreciate that. Initial writes, hey, John, I was wondering how the money from ticket sales is getting distributed right now. Are studios just letting theaters show whatever they want without compensation to get people in the seats? How will that work with new movies with prices being so low? All right, so we talked about these old archived movies being played in theaters right now. Empire Strikes Back, Back to the Future, whatever. I don't know this, but I suspect the studios that have the rights to those movies are either just letting the theaters play it for free or letting them play it for a minimal fee, like a minimal fee. And the reason I believe that is because the studios know that theaters need to get the engine moving and get some people back into the habit of coming back to the movie theaters. People getting back into the habit of going back to the movie theaters is good for the studios. So I do think that the studios are probably either letting the theaters play those older movies for free or for a minimum fee, not because they're trying to be charitable to the theaters, but because they know it's in their own best interests to get people buying tickets, letting word get out there that the theaters are open, we're open for business, and starting that process of getting people back into the movie theaters, because it's going to be a slow process. So I believe they're letting them do it for free or a minimum fee, not to be charitable, but because it's in the studio's own best interests. As far as reduced ticket prices for the new movies coming out, what probably has to happen there, and at least what would have happened back in my time when I was working with AMC, was they would have to negotiate that with the studio. Like the studios and the theaters would have to come to an agreement that, listen, I'm sure some places are just going to be charging regular price. I'm sure some places are going to probably be trying to charge reduced ticket prices. Like AMC is going to try to charge reduced ticket prices in order to, again, get people back in the theater. But they will have to come to an agreement with that with the studios. So the studios and the theaters will both have to look at that number and say, yes, this is good for all of us to do a reduced ticket price right now. So we'll all take a little bit of a hit on it. But it is what is best for the industry as a whole right now. So that's my guess initial. That's my guess about how that's all proceeding. Anyway, thank you so much again for supporting the channel on that level. And thanks for writing your question, man. It's a good one. All right, next up. Danzig 1979 tips $20. Thank you, Danzig, who writes in, hey, John and Co. I hope you're all doing well. Do you and Robert recall the short-lived 1977? That's a little before my time. I was 4 years old when that came out. Anyway, do you and Robert recall the short-lived 1977 Spider-Man CBS TV series with Nicholas Hammond? Many people may not, as it isn't on DVD or Blu-ray or streaming anywhere. It got me into comics 30 plus years. I adore the show. Okay, let me see if I can find something here. Spider-Man. Hold on a second. Spider-Man 1977. Let me see if I can find a. Is this Spider-Man from 1977? Might be. Trying to find a picture here of it. Wow, look at that costume. That looks like a costume somebody on Hollywood Boulevard would wear to take pictures with tourists. I am aware that such a show exists. Okay, let's just say that. I am aware that such a show did exist. I never watched it, clearly. So I never did see it, but I am aware that that show exists, but that's it. But I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that it created an impact on you. Like, I can only imagine, like, Robert Meyer Burnett often talks about when the Avengers first came out, when Joss Whedon's The Avengers came out, which I still believe is the greatest comic book movie of all time. Robert often talks about how he just couldn't believe that we had that movie. He just couldn't believe that we are at a place in the filmmaking technology that we can make this movie where all the Avengers are together. Imagine what it must have been like in like 1977 to have a TV show. And not long after that, Superman, You'll Believe a Man Could Fly. I can't even imagine what that must have been like for people who were comic book fans in the 50s and 60s to actually see on a television screen Spider-Man. Again, it's a little before my recollection and all that kind of stuff, but yeah, I can just imagine that something like that that we never would have seen before up until that point would make you probably a comic book fan. And here you are still to this day watching that type of material, which I think is awesome. So thank you. You know what? I might have to get, you know what? If anybody would have some kind of copy of that 1977 Spider-Man CBS series, it'll be Robert Meyer Burnett. So you know what? I'm going to do something weird. Right now, I'm going to text Robert Meyer Burnett right now as we speak. I'm going to text Robert right now. Also, I'm just waiting for my text app because I can text from my computer to open up. Hey, man, you don't happen to have a physical or digital copy of that 1977 Spider-Man CBS show, do you? There, I just sent that. I just texted that to Robert. If he replies to me while we're doing this show, I will let you know if he actually replies, because I'd be curious to see if that's actually the case. All right, thanks for saying that in, Danzig. Appreciate that. All right, Bernie Palafox writes, "Hey, John, longtime fan. Love you, good sir." Thank you so much, Bernie. Appreciate that. Question. Since AMC is reopening, I see they have an A-List member promo for $5 a month for a full year. Do you think this applies only to new members who sign up and not existing accounts? Brilliant promo. It's a great promo. Listen, I still contend that AMC A-List, just forgive me guys, as I pour another delicious can of Zevia Cola. Zevia, sponsor me, you sons of bitches. I believe that AMC A-List is the single greatest thing to ever happen to moviegoers. I really do. The deal is so great. And by extension, things like Regal Unlimited and things like that. It is simply the best deal that's ever come along for movie fans. I think it's fantastic. AMC and the movie industry is in a position right now where they need to do everything they can to encourage people to come back to the movie theaters. So I gotta believe, I don't know this, Bernie, because I haven't seen this. I haven't looked this up myself. My initial guess would be that such a deal would be for new members. That would probably be for new people who have not tried it, not signed up for it before, or whatever. And I'm cool with that. Hey, listen, AMC suspended my account, so I haven't, I still get my full year. I haven't been paying for A-List while the pandemic's been on, so I'm good. And when I signed up for a certain price, and I thought the price was great, and I'm good with that. If you offer a new deal to new customers who haven't signed up before coming out of this pandemic, I'm cool with that. I'm totally cool with that. My guess is that deal will probably only apply to new members, but I don't know that for sure. It might also be as an extension offer to ongoing memberships, but I don't know. But yeah, it's a great promo. It's a great idea. Having that A-List card will get you into theaters. And it's been proven. Like before the pandemic, that A-List program started turning a big profit for AMC. And so here's hoping that stuff like that and Regal Unlimiteds and others, here's hoping that's able to turn things around for them. Okay, next up, Russell Amador writes, "Hey, John, by any chance, did you see that Jason Bateman would be directing Superworld? Now the premise of this is something that intrigues me. It's about this guy in a world of humans, full of humans with superpowers, having no powers. Imagine being that guy." Yeah, I did read about this. So there's this thing called Superworld that I have not read. Okay. I don't even know if it's available yet. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But anyway, the idea of Superworld is everybody has a superpower. Some more than others, but everybody has some kind of superpower in the world, except for this one guy. And I think his name is Loman. Like his last name is, get it, Lowman. I think his last name is Loman, and he's the one guy in the world that does not have superpowers. What really makes it hard for him is that apparently his father is like one of the mightiest, most powerful beings in the world. He's like one of the strongest of all the superpowered people in the world. And he is his son and has no powers whatsoever. And he, if I'm remembering it correctly, now this Loman has to stop this supervillain whose power is canceling out other people's powers. So, who do you get to fight somebody who cancels out superpowers? Somebody without superpowers. I don't know. It's an interesting sounding idea. And I think the guy who's writing the script for it is the same guy who wrote the script for that Jason Bateman movie, Game Night. I really liked Game Night. And so I think it's a little bit of a reunion. Jason Bateman's supposed to be, I don't know if he's going to act in this movie or not, but it sounds interesting. It sounds interesting. Let's keep our eyes on that. Thanks for bringing that up, Russell. All right, next up, Superman Steve writes, "Hey, John, you really are truly amazing." Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate that. "I love your show so much. Thank you for being so incredibly kind and always funny and entertaining to watch. Question: what was the last thing you and Ann laughed at together?" Oh, that's easy. Kim's Convenience. We watched an episode yesterday. Listen, I am telling you what, I was late, and it's a Canadian show, but it started up after I left Canada, unfortunately. Hold on a second. Kim's Convenience. I was late to the party on this show. Significantly late to the party on this show. So Ann and I just started watching it. I just started watching it 2 weeks ago, I think. I think it might be 2 weeks ago. Now, granted, it is a Canadian show. It's a Canadian show. It's based in Toronto, all that kind of stuff. I am telling you what, not since The Office and Parks and Rec has a sitcom show made me laugh as much as this. I'm not saying Kim's Convenience is as good as The Office. I'm not saying Kim's Convenience is as good as Parks and Rec. I'm just saying I have not watched a sitcom that made me laugh as hard and as much as Kim's Convenience did. And by the way, this kid right here on the end, that's your new Shang-Chi, if I'm not mistaken. That's your new Shang-Chi. Marvel's Shang-Chi. That's him. But everybody in this cast is amazing. And my favorite character is the dad, the second one in, Appa. Appa is not quite Michael Scott, but Appa has to be one of my top 5 favorite characters in any sitcom in history. Again, I'm not saying he's Michael Scott. I'm not saying he's Jerry Seinfeld, but I think I would put him as one of my top 5 favorite characters in sitcoms ever. And I'm still just finishing season 1. But every single episode, I am laughing myself stupid. I am simply laughing myself stupid every single damn episode. And the very first episode is about Appa, and he runs a little convenience store in Toronto, dealing with the gay pride parade going on. And he creates something called the 15% discount for the gay. 15% discount only for the gay. The whole episode is like, oh my God, I'm just laughing myself sick. It's so funny. It's so good. So the last thing that Ann and I laughed at together was yesterday when we popped on an episode of Kim's Convenience. Guys, it's on Netflix. It's a little half-hour sitcom. I highly recommend you give it a shot. It's heartwarming in some parts, but it's just funny. So please do go and check that out. Appa, and again, Appa is one of my favorite characters on TV right now. Okay, anyway, thank you for that. Thanks, Superman Steve. All right, Travis writes. And Travis sends in a $20 tip. Thank you so much for that, Travis. Appreciate that, man. A few weeks ago, you talked about theaters moving to a sub-based model. This new service, it's aimed at the small and medium-sized theaters. Then the theater markets the service to customers. Will this be good for the theaters and consumers? My I think I've heard about this. So if I'm thinking of the right thing, this service, My Infinity, is, so what we have now is we have both the studio system and the movie theater system going through a massive change, right? The movie theaters have always been buy a ticket for a movie, get to see the movie. What we've seen in the last 24 months is the movie theater industry going through a major metamorphosis. They're making a major fundamental change to their business model, and that is they are transitioning to a subscription-based model. AMC A-List, Regal Unlimited, Alamo Drafthouse, although screw those guys. Anyway, Alamo Drafthouse, whatever. They're all moving to a subscription-based system, and I think that's great that's just the way we like to do things today. We like subscription-based services. We like getting, I don't know, what's something we get delivered to us? Like, we like our wine club, subscription-based service. We like Disney Plus, subscription-based service. We like our gym memberships. You don't pay every time you go to the gym. You buy a monthly subscription, basically, to the gym, so you get to go anytime. They call it membership. And so the movie theaters have been starting to make that adjustment as well. Subscription-based service. Pay X number of dollars a month. Come whenever you want, just like the gym. Come whenever you want. So the thing is, in order to make the subscription-based service work, unlike with MoviePass, which was a completely unsustainable business model, the individual theaters are able to make it work. That means there are going to be some movie theaters that can't afford to institute their own subscription-based service. So what do? Well, we've got there's more than one company trying to do it, but we're getting a couple of smaller companies coming out saying, hey, we'll do kind of what MoviePass did, only we'll do it smarter and more realistically, and we'll specifically aim our service to those movie theaters, those smaller theater chains and individual theaters that can't have their own subscription-based service, and we'll do it for them. Can that work? The problem is it's going to face the same kind of struggle that MoviePass faced. You see, for Regal to have Regal Unlimited, they win on a couple of levels with their subscription-based service. Number one, they're making money off the subscriptions, but more importantly, they're getting people into the theater. Remember, movie theaters really don't make hardly any money on the movie ticket price. Where movie theaters make their money is at the concession stand. That's where they make their money. So the subscription model brings people into the theater, and then once people come into the theater, they buy popcorn and nachos and soda and Junior Mints and M&Ms and whatever, and that's where the theaters make their money. MoviePass never had that, right? That's why MoviePass was trying to blackmail movie theaters into giving them a cut of their concession stands. And the theater said, screw you. That's what the theater said to MoviePass, and MoviePass went out of business. That's going to be the same struggle I think these new upstart companies that are trying to service the smaller theaters are going to face. Okay, you get money from subscriptions, but then you're going to have to pay out portions of that subscription to the individual theaters, and you're not getting that back-end money of concession stands that the individual theaters do when they run their own subscription-based service. You see what I'm saying? So it'll be interesting if they can find a way to make it work. And I hope they find a way that makes it work. I hope they do. But it is going to be a daunting challenge to see how this turns out. But hey, that's the evolving landscape, man. That's the evolving landscape. All right, let's see here. Next up, Tochi Victor writes, do you think it's acceptable to go to a movie theater and in a state heavily affected by COVID? Also, if you had to have a supernatural spin-off show, would it be a prequel, sequel, or focus on underdeveloped characters? Much love to movie fans. I don't care. Just make something good. As far as the first part of your question goes, yes. Look, it doesn't matter if you're in a state that's having not much of a problem right now because your state did a good job dealing with COVID, or you're in a state like California where it wasn't, it's still pretty bad, right? I believe you can go out of your front door and conduct yourself in such a way that minimizes risk to keep yourself safe and other people safe. Like I said, I've said this 100 times, but I go to the grocery store. I feel pretty safe. Is there a risk going into a grocery store? Yes, because hundreds and thousands of other people have been coming in there and blah, 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 and walking around those aisles, but they try to clean it as much as they can. They have people outside wiping down the carts. They have a rule that everybody's wearing a mask when they go in, yada, yada, yada. They do enough that makes me feel like, yes, even though there's a big pandemic right now, I feel reasonably safe that I can go into the grocery store and buy my stuff. I feel reasonably safe doing it. Reasonably safe. But you got to take the right precautions. I believe a movie theater is a safer space than a grocery store is. So I believe if you can do it right in a grocery store, you can do it right in a movie theater. It's all going to depend, though, on two things. The theaters having the right procedures and policies, and the individuals going in not being stupid, dick whistle, ignorant morons, and following those rules and safety procedures. If that happens, then I believe we're in a pretty good space. And I believe it is acceptable and reasonable that you can go and do it. It's also reasonable if you don't want to do that. That's also reasonable. But again, I believe you can. I am no doctor. I'm just saying, what my experience has been and what I think you can do and maybe what you shouldn't do. That's just my thought on that. I could be dead wrong about that, my friend. I could be dead wrong about it. All right. K Major writes, "Hey, John, is there such a thing as too much content?" Yes, it can be. Let me explain. I've recently come across Star Wars comics focused on Vader. I've loved the character ever since I first saw Empire Strikes Back many moons ago. Now I feel like his badassness has been diminished somewhat. By the prequels, we got a whiny teenager who grew into something of a whiny adult. I was like, okay, breathe, we can make it through this. Then they gave us a badass Vader again in Rogue One and Rebels. Very short, but it reestablished him as a feared Sith Lord. Now with these comics, I'm like, do we really need to know what was Vader's reaction to seeing a picture of Padme or Jar Jar? Shudders. I don't really care about his every emotional beat. The cyborg was evil. He was cool. End of story. Roll credit. Just my opinion. Well, listen, to a degree. Now, I've got a big Vader thing over here. Let me see if I can. I don't know if I can or not, but let me see if I can show this to you. Again, I'm not sure I can, but I will try. Can I do it? Can I do it? Oh, I think I can. Okay, hold on a second here. So I've got, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this or not. See that right there? The reason that, Vader thing is in wrap is because I have another copy of it that's already unwrapped. So yes, I have 2 copies of it, not to mention I have Vader down. There was an interesting camera angle. I have Vader down. I have a couple things. There's some really good stuff. There is some good material out there. But you're also right. Sometimes they go too much into it. That's why when they were talking about doing a Boba Fett live action movie, I was like, hell no. I don't want to see Boba Fett coming home after a day of work, taking his helmet off, kicking his feet up, watching baseball. I don't want to know that he's got, 2 wives on different planets and 5 kids and blah, blah. There's something about the mystery that should be maintained. We not only don't we need to have every single thing explained, we shouldn't have every little single thing explained. There should be a degree of mystery maintained. So, yes, I do believe there is doing too much. That doesn't mean doing everything is doing too much. It's not that every little thing that is out there is too much. I'm not saying that, but we have seen examples where we just do too much content around a particular character or whatever. We need to see the background story of Yoda. No, we don't. No, we don't. We need to see what the average day in the life of Boba Fett is. No, we don't. What makes Boba Fett so cool is that he never said a damn thing except for a couple of lines across the different movies. By the way, Robert Meyer Burnett just texted me right back and he says he does not have any copy of that CBS Spider-Man show from 1977. Oh, well, we tried. So anyway, getting back to this. Absolutely, you can do too much and sometimes they do. And that's part of the reason why I'm like, guys, can we just stop with every single freaking Star Wars project we have is let's look back at this character that we already know. Why? Star Wars is a vast universe. Do new stories with new characters. and new locations and bring a little bit of the nostalgia factors in. Absolutely, sure, no problem. But we don't need a freaking young Boba Fett movie. Leave some of the mystery alone. It's better for it. Anyway, so I agree with you, Kate. It's not always the case, but sometimes, yes. Sometimes more is too much. Sometimes more is great. Sometimes more is too much. All right. Ethan Holgate writes, "Hi, John. I know everyone has been waiting for years for James Cameron to release True Lies and the Abyss on Blu-ray and 4K. It seems like it will never happen. With Disney putting a stop to Blu-ray and 4K, will it ever happen now? Sorry if you don't know." Well, I mean, I don't know if it ever will happen. I mean, James Cameron has clearly never made it a priority to get those particular movies onto the new format. And with that new format now dying, I don't know if he'll ever make it a priority. Now, I don't collect physical media anyway. So personally, I don't care because I don't collect the physical media. But I hope it happens because I know people, including Rob and others, who do collect physical media and value their physical media. And so for them and their sake, I hope it happens so they can get it in there before physical media disappears altogether, which it is doing faster than we would like to agree. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. All right. Thanks a lot for that, Ethan. All right. K Major sends in a $20 tip. Thank you, K Major, so much for supporting the channel on that level, man. John, it's funny you went into the Batman / Bruce Wayne identity and how awesome Ben captured it. How come there's never a big clamor, at least not to my knowledge, about how Clark Kent is portrayed? I know it's all based on what story we get, and the focal point is Superman for obvious reasons. What are your thoughts on the portrayal of one Clark Kent? We got the best from Cavill, I believe, but no one says, I hope he makes a good Clark Kent when considering an actor to play Superman. Just my thoughts. Keep bringing on the filthy, bro. Well, thank you so much for sending that in, man. And I think there's a big difference because what is similar between Superman and Superman and Batman, is that for the most part, let me tell you where they differ. Let's start with where they differ. With Superman, there's not a lot of fundamental difference between Clark Kent and Superman. Even in the way they act and are portrayed. Even in the Christopher Reeve movie, yes, he tried to, when he was Clark Kent, he tried to act a little more bumbling. But even then, when you watched Christopher Reeve as Superman and Christopher Reeve as Clark, there wasn't a lot of fundamental difference between them personality-wise, right? And obviously physically, I'm Clark Kent, I'm Superman, it wasn't as fundamentally as stark of a difference. The stark difference between Batman and Bruce Wayne is night and day. Night, get it? No pun intended. But the difference between Bruce Wayne and Batman is night and day. Philanthropist, playboy, blah, blah, like this, blah, blah, blah. But Batman, it's totally different character. And I think that's why it stands out more, because when you're looking at casting Batman, you are looking for somebody who can play two very different roles. They can play the Batman, the Dark Knight, and they can play the Bruce Wayne character. When you're looking at Superman, it's not as distinct of a difference, in my opinion. You're really not looking for an actor who can play both Superman and Clark Kent, because there's really not that fundamental, massive chasm, night and day difference between the two personas, right? Superman and Clark Kent, about this close. Batman and Bruce Wayne, about that far apart, at least in my opinion. So yeah, that's why I think when you're getting into the casting of a new Batman movie, you hear the fans conversation revolving around, he's got to be able to do this as Batman, he's got to be able to do this as Bruce Wayne. And we really looked at them as two different roles. With Superman and Clark Kent, I don't think we've ever really considered them fundamentally different roles. So the glasses are apparently enough of differentiation between them, I suppose. Anyway, that's just my kind of, it's a really interesting question, K Major. That's kind of my take on it. I would love to know what you guys think about that. Jump into the comments and let me know your thoughts. All right. I am sorry, a Canadian writes, my top 10 things that make me proud to be Canadian. Number 1, the Red Green Show. I used to love Red Green on Smith and Smith. And then the Red Green Show. Remember, guys, if the ladies can't find you handsome, they should at least find you handy. It's just a great line. Anyway, 2, Great Big Sea. I love Great Big Sea. I haven't heard anybody mention Great Big Sea in a long time. 3, the Bare Naked Ladies. By the way, I worked as a roadie for a Bare Naked Ladies show one day many years ago at a music festival, and they showed up like 8 hours early before the show. They hung out with the stage crew and whatever, and one of the guys from Bare Naked Ladies actually gave me a couple of his guitar picks from the show that he played. And to this day, I have those guitar picks in my guitar case. I still have the picks that the guy from the Bare Naked Ladies gave me, and I still treasure them. Anyway, 4, Corner Gas. Number 5, David Suzuki. Number 6, Pierre Elliott Trudeau. Number 7, National Provincial Parks. Number 8, Anne Murray. Anne Murray, running her way down River Road. Number 9, Toronto. Number 10, John Candy. Number 11, the Reverend Don Cherry, who is no longer with Hockey Night in Canada. He got himself into some trouble, but man, I watched Don Cherry every Saturday night on Hockey Night in Canada. I used to love watching Don Cherry on that. He doesn't have all the fans in the world right now. I get that, but I used to love watching Don Cherry. All right. Anyway, thanks for that. I am sorry, a Canadian. Appreciate that, man. Jesse C. writes, Part 1. Hey, John. Been a fan since the Batman vs. Superman first trailer leak. Oh, man, that's going back a while. Found your show by just flipping from YouTube channel, trying to see what people are saying about it. It was you, Dennis, Alicia Malone, and Sinead hosting, discussing it that day. Going back, that would still be first Batman versus Superman trailer. That probably would have been when we were still AMC. Yes, that definitely would have been when we were still AMC. When we were doing that. So I remember that. It's funny because a lot of people have started watching my stuff as a result of Superman. Most people say they found me the first time was for the very first review for Man of Steel. That's where a lot of people say they first found me. And other than that, I get a bunch of people saying either from reaction from Batman versus Superman or other DCEU related stuff. So it's kind of funny that that's the one that you remember finding. And a lot of people too, by the way, say they just kind of stumbled across because they were searching for something and they came across this piece of content we did on that particular movie that they were looking for, and away we went. So thank you for taking me down that little memory road there, Jesse. I appreciate that. All right. Next up, Jesse also writes, Part 2. Since then, been a big fan of yours and will continue to support you going forward. Stay healthy and safe with Lovecraft County and Raised by Wolves coming out on HBO Max. Max already has more high-profile shows and less time than Disney+. I mean, that's true. But I will say this. It's not like everybody is talking about Lovecraft County or that everybody's talking about Raised by Wolves. It's not like Mandalorian was. Everybody was buzzing about Mandalorian. Now, granted, it's Star Wars, so of course, but I'm not hearing anybody talking and buzzing about those. But you're right. HBO, listen, HBO botched their launch. There's no way around it. They botched it. They're still not on Roku or Amazon Fire Stick. They completely screwed up their launch. But I always said they'll be fine. In the long run, they will be fine because they're HBO and they know what they're doing. And so I'm very, very interested to see how they evolve. And yeah, in some ways, they're already doing a better job than Disney+. But they also have a lot of things they need to correct. And we'll see how that all kind of goes moving forward. Thanks again for saying that in, Jesse. I really appreciate that. All right, Patty Benina, one of our Patreon supporters, writes, tickets for my local AMC went on sale Thursday. Yes, they block alternate rows, but according to the seating map, it looks like they have sold every seat in the open rows. No social distancing. That's got to be a mistake. That has to be a mistake. WTF, John, I love movies, but I'm not willing to die to see one. Yeah, no, that's got to be an error. That I would get a hold of the theater because they are supposed to be staggering those seats unless you buy like your tickets with another person. You can sit beside each other, but that shouldn't be the case. And I believe AMC specifically said they would have those distancing things in place. So I would double check with your theater, because my assumption is that's got to be an error. That has to be an error on their part. So I would call the theater, talk to them, ask them to specifically tell them tell you what their policy is on that. Because that has got to be a mistake, and they should correct that, because that goes against what they've been saying they'd be doing. So follow up with them on that. And please then email me at john@thejohncampeashow.com and let me know what they say to you. Because I've got to just assume that that's an error. That must be an error on their part. So please follow up with me once you talk to them, and I'd love to know what they tell you. All right, thanks for that, Patty. And thank you for being a Patreon supporter. We appreciate that. All right, Adrian E. writes, "Hey, John." Sorry, throat's getting sore here. "Hey, John, I recently saw The Social Network again. Great movie. One of Rob's favorite movies. And damn, what a film. Sorkin's screenplay is stupid amazing. I was surprised to find out that Andrew Garfield didn't get a nomination for supporting actor. What gives? His performance was as stellar. Thanks." Yes, it was. And listen, I'll tell you what. I have always been stunned. To this day, I am borderline offended. I am borderline offended that that Andrew Garfield did not get a Best Supporting Actor nomination for that movie. Andrew Garfield was the heart of that movie. His character brought the humanity to the movie. He was stellar in that. Not only do I believe he should have been nominated for Best Supporting Actor, he should have won Best Supporting Actor. It's fine that he didn't win, but the fact that he wasn't nominated, I thought was a travesty, especially since, and this is a little pet peeve of mine with these movies, especially since the guy who did win Best Supporting Actor shouldn't have even been nominated for Best Supporting Actor, because he was not a supporting actor in the movie. We're talking about Christian Bale. Christian Bale for, what was it, The Fighter? Was that the name of the movie? The Fighter that he did with Mark Wahlberg? He was not a supporting actor in that movie. He was every bit the lead actor in that movie as Mark Wahlberg was. He had every bit of screen time. He's the featured guy on the poster with Mark. He was not a supporting actor. The problem was they knew they couldn't nominate Christian Bale for lead actor because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was the year that Colin Firth got nominated for The King's Speech, and there wasn't anybody who was going to beat Colin Firth in The King's Speech that year for Best Lead Actor. So they put him in the Best Supporting Actor category, which was bullshit, because that was not a supporting actor role. And because he did get put there, somebody else who did do a supporting role and maybe deserved that spot got bumped out. And it just highlights the fact that Andrew Garfield should have been nominated for Best Supporting Actor for his role in Social Network. I believe that since day one. I will always believe that. I thought he was incredible in that. And I will always believe that Christian Bale, as great as he is, and I love Bale and I love him in that movie, there is no way in hell he should have been in that category. No way in hell he should have been in that category. Okay. Let's see here. Moving on. Oh, sorry, I'm just checking out the live chat there. Okay, let's keep moving here. Adrian E. writes. Oh, no, that was Adrian E. Okay, so we move on here. Adrian E. also writes, "The rock band The Doors are amazing. I own all of their albums on vinyl and listen to them with no shame. I really wish we got a movie about The Doors. We have one about The Doors. I know Oliver Stone directed one from the 90s, but I'd really like to see a new film based upon them." I don't know. Is it needed? Do we need another movie about The Doors? Especially when the first one is so good. Val Kilmer was great in that movie. The God of Rock. I mean, that was a really good movie. I don't know that we need another one. I don't know that we need another biopic about a band when we already have so many of them especially when we already had one about that band and it's really good. I don't know. I mean, what is that? What is the new one going to say that other one didn't say? I don't know. And I'm not I like the Doors. I'm not the biggest Doors fan, but yeah, I dug the movie. I don't know that it needs another one. I gotta admit, I don't think it needs another one. Just go back and watch that one. There's a lot of other people that need biopics that we don't need another one from the Doors that we already got. Unless, of course, you didn't like that one. If you didn't like that movie, then I can understand as a fan of the Doors that you'd want to see it done again. But if you like that one, you think it really did a good job and it's really entertaining, I don't know that we need another biopic about the same band that was already done. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe there is an argument to be made for it, though. Anyway, thanks for writing that in, Adrian. All right, David Crabtree writes, if there was gardening on Krypton, do you suppose they kneeled before sod? Thank you. I'm here all weekend. Tip your waitress. I'll give you the drum shot for that. There you go. Kneel before sod. Okay, Derek writes, hey, John, have you had a chance to look at the trailer for Netflix's new movie, Devil All the Time, coming in September? We just talked about this a little bit earlier, about an hour ago, I think. It stars Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson, and a few others. Just in the trailer alone, it looks like a great movie. What are your thoughts? Again, I'm seeing a lot of people are really liking this trailer. And it certainly has people in it that I really like. But again, to me, and I'm in the minority here. I am in the minority. To me, it feels like a poor man's There Will Be Blood. To me, it looks like I've seen it all before. To me, it's like, oh, surprise, surprise, the preacher's the bad guy. I just feel I didn't see anything there to get excited about other than who was in it. Now, again, I'm not saying the movie's not going to be awesome. It could very well be fan-frickin-tastic. I hope it is, because I love everybody in it. But I'd be lying to you if I told you that I liked the trailer. I didn't hate it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's like the biggest piece of trash trailer I've seen. No, not at all. But it didn't do anything for me. You know, I always say that the job of a trailer is to take your anticipation of a level of a movie, no matter how high or low it is, and bump it up a couple of notches. And I got to say, I already had a certain level of expectation for Devil All the Time just because of who's in it. So my expectation level is already up here. That trailer didn't do anything to bump it up a notch or two. It just looked too like I've seen this before. And it looks like a worse version of There Will Be Blood in a way. But again, that doesn't mean anything about the movie. The movie could be fantastic, and I'm going to keep my fingers crossed and hope that it is. All right, Topher Rocks writes, what's your opinion on chemistry on both film sets and with sports teams? Do you think chemistry is vital to success, or does talent always override chemistry? Chemistry is incredibly important. Here's what I'll say. There are definitely examples of movies. Take Mad Max Fury Road, right? That was infamously a very difficult set. The two main stars of the movie hated each other, with Charlize Theron and Tom Hardy. There was a lot of grumbling amongst the crew. It was difficult shooting conditions, blah, blah, blah. But the sheer talent of Miller, the director, of the two leads, of all that kind of stuff, really pushed that through and made it a very, very good movie. That said, there were also sports teams that may not have had the greatest teams that could have success. Look at whenever the Cleveland Cavaliers had LeBron James, right? They had LeBron James. They finished in first place in the NBA. The very next year, LeBron James wasn't there, and the Cleveland Cavaliers finished in last place. There's an example of just pure, sheer, massive talent bringing you more success than maybe you deserved. But I will say this. If you have equal talent on teams, the team with the better chemistry is going to win. I think if you have equal talent power on a movie project or any kind of creative project, if one team just intrinsically works better together and they have better chemistry and better flow amongst themselves, they're 9 times out of 10 going to put out the better product. I think they are 9 times out of 10 going to put out the better product. Not always, but I would go so far as to say if you have two groups of people, whether it's a sports team, a creative team, whatever, one is 5% more pure talent, one has 5% better chemistry, I'll take the 5% better chemistry. Now, if you have a situation where you have one creative team has 20% more talent and this one has 5% better chemistry, well, then I'd probably go with the more talent. But all other things being equal, the better the chemistry, the better your results will be. The better your chemistry, the better your results will be. That's not always the hard and fast rule. There are exceptions to it. We could all sit down and come up with some exceptions, both in the creative world and in the sports world. But I think all other things being equal, yeah, chemistry trumps a lot of stuff. And yeah, I think just chemistry is vitally, vitally important. So that's my kind of take on it, Tovarex. Great question, man. All right, next up. The Mischievous Gremlin writes in, sends in $20. Thank you, Mischievous Gremlin. You've sent in a number of them. All right, man, let's buckle in. Let's get through this. 1 of 3. Hey, John, I was wondering if you just saw the latest Devil All the Time trailer. We just talked about that again. It looks very interesting, and it has brought me to ask you this question. What are your thoughts of Robert Pattinson as an actor? Every time I bring him up to these to people, they say he's a horrible actor because he was in Twilight. I feel like they haven't seen his other work, like Good Time and The Lighthouse, just to name a few. Do you feel movies like Tenet, The Devil All the Time, and The Batman will change a lot of people's opinions about him? Thanks for all you do and have a great weekend. All right. Thanks so much for sending that in, Mischievous, and thanks so much for supporting the channel on that level, man. That was really generous of you. Look, what I have said about Robert Pattinson this whole time is this. Robert Pattinson has turned into one of the, I'm not going to say best, like top 3 or 4, but one of the better actors in the business today. The problem is a lot of film people are casual film people. And there's nothing wrong with being a casual film fan. They'll watch the big high profile stuff. They'll watch, they'll watch The Batman. They'll watch Avengers. They'll watch Harry Potter. They'll watch maybe even Twilight. But they don't watch a lot of other great movies because they're not high profile, big blockbuster stuff. So for those people, when they think of Robert Pattinson, understandably, they think of Twilight. Twilight boy. Yeah, the Twilight boy. And they'll just think of them. And listen, admittedly, Robert Pattinson, it doesn't exactly give Academy Award level performances in Twilight. All right. So it's not like he was fantastic and just an otherwise disappointing series of movies. No, he wasn't great back then. Well, it was fine. But the thing is, since doing the Twilight films, and this is what I explain to people all the time, since doing those Twilight films, he has very quietly gone about amassing an incredible body of work in smaller independent films. You mentioned Lighthouse, which was one of the more recent ones, Good Time, but other films, High Life. Oh my God, he is so good in High Life. The Rover, which I actually personally think might be his best performance, and several others where not every single movie he's done has been fantastic, but he's been fantastic in all of them, to the point that when they were looking for an actor to act beside Willem Dafoe for Lighthouse, they got Robert Pattinson because they knew Robert Pattinson could hold his own beside such a great actor as Willem Dafoe. When Christopher Nolan was looking for a star for his new Tenet movie, he went out and wanted Robert Pattinson. When Matt Reeves was looking for a new Batman, well, hell, Robert Pattinson's good enough for the guy who directed the last Batman movies. He's good enough for me. Now, what has happened is A-list Hollywood directors are wanting to work with Robert Pattinson. They are lining up to get him to come into their projects because Robert Pattinson in the post-Twilight era spent a lot of years just working his craft, being in smaller art-styled films and turning in incredible performances and becoming one of the better actors in the business. And it's not every time, because how good or bad do you think an actor is as subjective as thinking that a movie is good or bad. But what I have normally found, not all the time, and there are many exceptions, but I'm just saying, what I have normally found is when I've come across somebody either in person or online and says, Robert Pattinson's not a good actor. I follow up the question. I'm curious. Have you seen The Rover? Or have you seen High Life? Have you seen Good Time? I'm just curious if you've seen the movies. No, but I saw him in those Twilight movies, man. I saw him in those Twilight movies. He's terrible. He's terrible. Oh, okay. So what I normally find is that the people, not always, and there are many exceptions, what I have, just telling you what my experience has been, what I have normally found is that the people who will come out and go, Robert Pattinson, terrible actor, they're generally people who only know him from his Twilight or his small Harry Potter appearance. That's all they know him from. And so, to a degree, you have to cut them some slack because, listen, if all you've seen of Robert Pattinson is the Twilight movies, then it's understandable that you may not have the highest opinion of him as an actor. That's understandable. I get it. But I would then challenge people, listen, that last Twilight movie is a long time ago, man. Check out Rover. Check out Good Time. Check out High Life. Check out any of these other movies that he has done where he has truly become a great actor. He's a great actor. I may not like all of his public comments. I don't have to like all of his public comments. But he's a great actor. He is. So two things. One, people got to check out his other work before saying he's not a good actor. But two, you got to also cut some people some slack for saying they don't think he's a good actor if they haven't seen anything outside of Twilight. Because honestly, if all you've got to go on is his Twilight stuff, maybe he doesn't look so good. So I believe it works both ways on that. Great question, Mischievous Gremlin. And hopefully, yeah, just next time somebody says that to you, just say, I really encourage you to go and watch one of these movies. This one, or this one. Then I'd be curious to know your opinion about how he is as an actor after watching one of those. I'd just be curious to know. So that's what I would respond. Anyway, great question, man. All right, Boris writes, hey, John, what's the brutal action sequence you love and admire from a film? For me, my top two are the church scene in Kingsman. That's a good one. And the restaurant scene from Anna. Anna was one that kind of got overlooked a lot, but you're right. That was a great scene. Also, Kong will win. Team Kong, my friends. Thanks for all your hard work. I'd have to think about that. I'd have to think about that one. Huh. The first one that comes to mind, although there's not a lot of blood in it, but if you're just talking about pure slaughter, there'd be a couple of John Wick scenes I think would come to mind. Yeah, I'm thinking I'm back. But somebody brought it up earlier, and I am a little bit of a Star Wars homer, but that Vader scene that very short Vader scene in Rogue One is hard. It's hard not to say that one. That one, pretty brutal, pretty violent, a lot of dead guys in that. So I would probably go that. I like that one even more than that Colin Firth Kingsman scene. Although the Colin Firth Kingsman scene is wild. It's wildly good. And if I had more time to think of it, I might come up with one or two others. But for now, I will go with the Vader scene. I'll go with that Vader scene. Good question, Boris. All right, next up. Iman writes, one of three. Hey, John. Reports have Netflix insiders saying 3 reasons. By the way, I don't believe these reports. I know the report you're talking about, and I don't buy them, but let's go into this. Hey, John, reports have Netflix insiders saying 3 reasons Avatar: The Last Airbender creators left were budget, cast diversity, Netflix wanted opportunity to cast white actors, and overall tone, age up characters, darker, mature tone. FYI, what Legend of Korra ended up being. These 3 important items should have been agreed before show running. So I do fault them, the creators, for that. However, even though you alluded to Netflix overall track record for shows, based on this show being more fantasy-like, the comparisons would be more like Cursed, Letter to the King, and Warrior Nun, which are okay shows, but not exactly the showcase series for Netflix. All very similar in budget, production. Frankly, they all seem the same. I don't think those are better comparisons, to be honest with you. I don't think you can handpick which ones you want to make comparisons. Overall, just Netflix knows how to make great shows. And they have like 5,000 Emmys to prove it. So let's start off with the report. Number one, there is a report going around. There is a site that claims that they had, and it's not a particularly popular site, but they have there is a site that claims that they have several Netflix insiders who have told them that the real reason was the casting of white characters, budget, and overall tone. And again, I don't buy the report. That's not to say that this particular website is lying. Not at all. Maybe they were given wrong information. Maybe they were, whatever the case is. I'm not faulting the outlet. Just be clear. I'm not faulting the outlet. I'm just saying I don't buy the report. I don't buy it. I don't buy that some smaller outlet got that when Hollywood Reporter didn't get Netflix insiders to tell them that. And The Wrap didn't get Netflix insiders to tell them that. And Deadline didn't get Netflix. And Variety didn't get it. Oh, but this site did. Listen, over 90% of the time, that stuff like that comes out from some smaller place, 90% of the time it ends up not being true. That means 10% of the time it is. But, you know, if you knew that 90% of the time something doesn't work, you wouldn't do that. So for me, it's like, well, if it ends up being true, then it will eventually come out in the major trades. Variety, Deadline, The Hollywood Reporter, The Wrap, whatever. If it's true, it will eventually come up there. So I don't buy the report at all, but that doesn't eliminate the chances that it could be true. But until I see it from a more reputable place, I'm not gonna buy into it for now. Again, no disrespect or disparaging in any way the outlet that's reporting it. I'm just saying where I'm at as a fan, where I'm at, I don't buy into those things, or else I'm going to be buying into every weird theory that comes out and whatever. So if it is true, it will eventually pop up over there, and then we can give that outlet the credit they're due and that they deserve. So I don't buy it. So just right up front, I don't buy that report. One of the main reasons I don't buy the report is because I covered this earlier in the show in hour one, is that I don't believe for a second that the diversity question and whether or not characters are going to be white or not wasn't a part of the very first discussions that Netflix and the Avatar creators had 2 years ago when they first entered into this agreement. Because if the creators of Avatar, after having the experience that they had with M. Night, didn't make the first topic of conversation in their negotiations to come on and showrun a live action Avatar series, if the number one thing on their agenda to talk about wasn't, are we going to make these characters white, then they're idiots. Then they are incompetent idiots that I don't want anywhere near a show I'm going to watch anyway. And if that topic wasn't number one on the priority list for Netflix in talking to these Avatar creators about having them come on to be the showrunners for a new live action adaptation, if that wasn't the number one thing on the agenda to talk about in negotiating this deal, then that makes Netflix a bunch of idiots. And I do not believe that the Avatar creators or Netflix are a pair of giant morons. I just don't believe or buy into the idea that they're morons, and they didn't already settle that issue when they first entered into their agreement. I just don't buy it. I don't buy it. That's a conversation you have on day one. That is a conversation you have on day fucking one. And I believe that the Avatar creators are not idiots. I don't believe they're incompetent. I don't believe they're stupid. So I believe they had that conversation with Netflix on day one. I don't believe that it took them 2 years to figure out, oh, we're not on the same page as this. Who knew? Maybe we should have talked about this before. I don't buy that. And who knows? Maybe Netflix and the Avatar creators are all idiots. And they didn't talk about it until 2 years into the process. Maybe, but I don't believe it. There are a couple things, though, about that does raise some interesting questions. Budget is always a question for every show. You know, showrunners will always want more budget. That's a universal truth. Doesn't matter if you're working on Kim's Convenience. It doesn't matter if you're working on Mandalorian. all showrunners want more budget. The worst showrunners in the world, the best showrunners in the world, they all want more budget. So that's believable. The idea of tone, again, believable, but again, I can't imagine that the tone of the series they'll be going for in live action was not a part of the initial talks that they would. What else did you talk about? That's the thing. If you're the creators of Avatar and you're Netflix and you're sitting down together for the first time 2 years ago to discuss working together on a live action Avatar series, what did you talk about if you didn't talk about what's the tone of this show going to be? What did you talk about if you didn't talk about that? What did you talk about if you didn't talk about, hey, do you think we should make all the heroes white again? If you didn't talk about that, what did you talk about? Did you talk about corporate parking spaces? Did you talk about your lunch budget? Did you talk about the color of the pants you get to wear in the Netflix offices? Like, if you didn't talk about the tone that the show was going to be, if you didn't talk about whether or not you're going to have the same situation as M. Night's thing where all the heroes are all white characters, if you didn't talk about those things, what did you talk about? What was part of the conversation? You know, and so, I don't know. The budget thing could be it. Maybe, again, what I strongly suspect here, Iman, what I strongly suspect, and again, I'm not pretending that I've got insider sources. I'm just telling you what I suspect. That's it. Just speculating like any fan does. What I strongly suspect is, as they progressed on the development of the show, that Netflix started to recognize some of the things that the Avatar guys wanted to do was probably not going to work so well in a live action environment. And they probably gave some pushback. The Avatar guys were like, hey, we thought we had creative freedom. We thought we were the showrunners. And so they push back and push back and push back. And ultimately, you know, the Avatar guys realize we're not going to get to do everything we want to do. We don't have total control here, so we're going to walk. Because we had this bad, even though it's a very different situation than the M. Night situation, they were probably still kind of butthurt, understandably so, and a little bit trigger shy because of what happened with the M. Night situation. But I don't know. I don't know. Again, just to emphasize this point one more time, if you didn't talk 2 years ago in conversation one about, are our heroes going to be white? And what's the tone of our show going to be? If you didn't talk about that on day one, what did they talk about? So I don't know. That's just where I'm at. But who knows, man? There's probably a million details behind the scenes that we don't know about, and we'll have to just wait and see. Thanks for bringing that up, man. All right, next up. Dan Ketchum writes, even though Blazing Saddles starred Cleavon Little and was written by Richard Pryor, HBO Max is adding a 3-minute disclaimer. But the people ridiculed are the racists. These are people of the land. Oh, this was the line by Gene. I'm forgetting Gene's name. Anyway, these are people of the land, the common clay of the New West. You know, morons. True, but listen, there is. Let's not look. Blazing Saddles is one of the great comedies of all time, but let's not pretend that there aren't things in it that are like, woo, that's kind of edgy for today, right? I have no problem, just like I had no problem when they did this with Gone with the Wind. The idea of putting a little bit of a discussion disclaimer at the beginning of a movie, listen, I'll take that any day of the week over editing the movie, right? Because remember, they did the same thing with Gone with the Wind. They didn't edit Gone with the Wind. They didn't take anything out, but they attached kind of a disclaimer and discussion up at the top, you know, reminding people that there were different times and, you know, what they were meaning and what they were going for and all that kind of stuff. I got no problem with that. You want to put on a disclaimer or whatever in front of it? That's fine. As long as you leave the movie intact. If you leave the movie intact, then I'm good with it. I personally have no problem with it. I'll be honest with you, man. When I saw the headline that they were adding that on to Blazing Saddles, I was not surprised in the least, Dan. I was not surprised in the least. Because Brooks did a lot of edgy stuff in there that's really edgy today. And so I'm cool with it. I have no problem with that. Totally cool with it. As long as they didn't touch the movie, I'm good. All right. Campea Breakdance video writes, I saw where Zack Snyder had posted some behind the scenes pics of him and the crew using the House of L as a skateboard park. He seems like a guy that really embraces his cast and crew. I've been a fan of his for years and can't wait for the Snyder Cut. Yeah, listen, I think, everybody who has worked with Zack Snyder that I know of, has enjoyed working with Zack Snyder. A friend of Anne's, one of her sorority sisters, worked with Zack Snyder on Sucker Punch. She's one of the stars of Sucker Punch. Jamie is one of the the stars of Sucker Punch. Jamie just raved about working with Zack Snyder on that. She loved working with him. The couple of times I've had the opportunity to talk with Henry Cavill, Henry said that he's really loved working with Zack Snyder. I talked to a number of the cast from 300. They all loved working with Zack Snyder. So the basic gist is that people really like working with him. And I think he really likes working with them, with the people that he surrounds himself with. And I think there are a number of filmmakers that are like that. And that's always a good thing. That's never anything but positive. Some of the great directors in Hollywood history, sometimes were very prickly, and a lot of people found it to be a nightmare to work with them, but they still worked with them because the directors were geniuses. And yeah, that happens. But all other things being equal, you'd prefer to have like a director where people legitimately enjoyed working with you, but it doesn't always work that way. Some of the best directors in history, nobody liked working with, but they got the job done. So I don't know. It goes back or forth about that. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Snyder Cut turns out. My thing is this. You guys know how I feel about Man of Steel, right? And I like Batman versus Superman, and I like the theatrical version of Justice League. The reality is, though, despite the fact of how much I love Man of Steel, and it doesn't matter, you go back to my very first review of it where most people initially found me, all the way up to the 27-minute editorial video I put out about it, about why Man of Steel is the most underrated comic book film of all time. The reality is, half the people hated it. Half the audience hated it. Half the critics hated it. Whenever I talk about Man of Steel and how great it is, I inevitably get like 30 comments. It wasn't great. It sucked. And it's all subjective. It's fine. If people thought it sucked, people thought it sucked. It is what it is. But a lot of people hated Man of Steel. They hated it. I thought Batman versus Superman was quite good. Not as good as Man of Steel, but I thought Batman vs. Superman was quite good. Reality is, a lot of people hated it. A lot of people hated it. Critics, audiences, whatever. And oddly enough, and this is kind of an inconvenient truth that a lot of people don't like acknowledging, but this is a fact. Okay, this is a fact. Justice League, for all of its turmoil, the reality is Justice League not only has a higher critic rating than Batman vs. Superman did. Justice League, the theatrical cut, also had a higher audience rating across the board than Batman vs. Superman did. My point is, and by the way, I think Batman vs. Superman is probably better than I like the Justice League theatrical cut. I do. But I thought Batman versus Superman was better. I clearly think Man of Steel is better. But the reality is that tons of people hated Man of Steel. Tons of people hated Batman versus Superman. And while I suspect that I'm going to like the Snyder Cut because I like Man of Steel so much and I like Batman versus Superman so much, I suspect I'm going to like it. I think there are some people who are think that magically, all of a sudden, all these people who did not like Snyder's approach on Man of Steel and all these people who didn't like Snyder's approach on Batman versus Superman, all of a sudden, they're going to like Snyder's approach. They're all of a sudden going to love what he does with Justice League. And I just think that's an unrealistic expectation. It's not impossible, but I think it's an unrealistic expectation. A lot of the audience, a lot of the fans got to see what Snyder did, even when what he did was a masterpiece like Man of Steel, and they hated it. A lot of people saw what Zack Snyder did in the DCEU with Batman versus Superman, which I think is quite good, but a lot of people hated it. I don't think there's any solid foundational basis to actually believe that magically now people are going to love what he does with the DCU and they're going to love the Snyder Cut of Justice League. I just think that's unrealistically high expectations. I suspect I'm going to like it. I suspect I'll probably like it more than the theatrical version was. Even though Joss Whedon came in and did the impossible and saved that movie, because Warner Brothers had decided they didn't want Zack Snyder's vision of that movie. They wanted it torn up, and they wanted to bring in another filmmaker to change it up completely, but not change the release date. And you only got this much time, and you've only got this much budget to do it. Go make it happen. And somehow, some way, Joss Whedon was able to come in and do what Warner Brothers wanted done. And I think a lot of directors never would have been able to do that. And so in that sense, I believe Joss Whedon did save that movie. I suspect, since I like Man of Steel so much, I suspect that Snyder's vision for Justice League is going to be one that I probably end up liking more than the theatrical version, even though I like the theatrical version. But I don't have any expectations that all these fans and critics who didn't like Snyder's work before are magically all of a sudden going to start appreciating it now. So what I think people need to do is just go into the Snyder Cut hoping that they like it. All I'm hoping is that I like it. That's all I'm hoping for. I'm just hoping that I like it. I don't need it to be as good as Man of Steel. But I mean, if it is, fantastic, because that gives me another top 10 all-time greatest comic book movies. I don't need for it to be as good as Batman versus Superman, although I suspect it will be. I just want to like it myself. And I think if more fans go into it with that expectation, I think more people are going to come out being happy about it. But, we'll see. We'll see. All right, next up. Thanos Doc writes, no, you don't usually do top 10s, but my favorite movie scores are Godfather and Godfather. The Godfather score is amazing. And Heavy Metal. What are a few of your favorites? Today's birthday activity. August 14th for me, day off, cut the lawn, watching the John Campea Show. Happy birthday, Thanos Doc. I hope you have a fabulous day and a fabulous year ahead of you, my friend. Yeah, like you said, I don't do top 10s. I'm not going to sit here and pull off a top 10 off the top of my head. I just don't do that. Some of my all-time favorite scores, though, are fairly obvious. Obviously, anything John Williams Star Wars related. John Williams' Star Wars stuff is incredible. Most of his work through his career is incredible. But, I mean, I cannot get away from Lord of the Rings. Everything from the thematic music surrounding the Shire, the thematic music surrounding Mordor, the thematic music surrounding each of the individual characters that have their own unique sounds. It's just amazing. It's just amazing. So I often go back to that one, obviously. And I really like the score to Man of Steel. I listen to the soundtrack to Man of Steel at least a couple times every week. It's funny, Rob and I were in a car yesterday, and I actually popped on Hans Zimmer's Live in Prague performance of What Are You Going to Do When You're Not Saving the World from the Man of Steel soundtrack. I put that one in there as well. Anyway, happy birthday again to you, my friend. May you have a glorious day ahead of you, buddy. All right, next up. Now, we have gone over 2 hours today, which we normally do not do on a regular John Campea show because of what I explained with YouTube earlier. But because today is an open mic and it's Friday, we're just going to keep going here. All right. Although my voice is starting to go. In a band, 23 writes, do studios or theaters keep track of refunds given out per movie when they are released? I gotta believe they do. I mean, listen, any type of large company, hell, any type of small business probably keeps very detailed records of money in and out. You have to balance the books. So something like a corporation on the size of a Regal Cinemas or whatever, They absolutely would have to keep track of refunds. They would absolutely have to keep track of refunds. Because, you know, a lot of people get refunds for whatever reasons, differing reasons here or there, but you've got to be able to account for every single dollar. So yeah, I fully anticipate and expect that movie theaters in particular keep very close records of when tickets get refunded, and they then probably pass those reports on to the movie studio. So yes, absolutely. Good question though. Tobias, Common Thong writes, John, could you talk about Doctor Doom future in the MCU? And do you think the solo Doctor Doom movie project is dead? I do think the solo Doctor Doom project is dead. Now, we heard the creator and the showrunner of Legion on FX. He, remember at Comic-Con, they made the announcement that he got handed, when Fox was still independent, Fox got him to develop, and he was going to do a solo Doctor Doom movie. However, then the merger happened, and Noah had a conversation, said he did have a conversation with Kevin Feige, and all Kevin Feige says, hey, you were still working on that Doctor Doom thing? He said, yeah, but then nothing ever came of it. So it is not impossible that that Doctor Doom project could see the light of day at some point. If I had to bet $5 on it, though, I would bet it's dead. I mean, it may not be. It totally might not be. But from everything we've seen so far, I haven't seen anything that would indicate that it's still alive. All signs point to it being dead. So there's that. What's Doctor Doom's future in the MCU? Well, whatever it is, it's going to be connected to the Fantastic Four. That's what they will do. They will connect Doctor Doom to the Fantastic Four. Of course, what Kevin Feige could do is like bring a Doctor Doom in as a villain in a Hulk movie if he wanted to. Not that Disney can't do a Hulk movie right now, but whatever. You could bring Doctor Doom in as a character in another movie. You could, but I believe you're going to see him connected to the Fantastic Four. Not necessarily the first Fantastic Four movie they do, whenever they get around to that, which is still years away. Maybe this will be the second one or the third one, or maybe it'll be the first. But I believe that whatever they do, it'll be connected to the Fantastic Four. All right, next up, Jacob G writes, who sends in a tip of $20. Thank you, Jacob, for supporting us on that level, man. We really appreciate that. The Avatar story has got me thinking about adaptations more broadly. You know what, guys? It's getting warm in here. I'm going to turn up. We've got actually a heat warning in the San Fernando Valley here today. It's supposed to get up to 102 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's getting warm. So I'm going to turn on my AC. So forgive the background noise, guys. All right, Jacob G writes, the Avatar story has got me thinking about adaptations more broadly. Why are films based on video games / cartoons almost always live action? Why not just make an animated film? Seems like that would be a more direct and easier adaptation to make. Thanks. Money. Most people want to see, like when you read a comic book or you read a novel or you play a game, you want to see what that would be like in an actual real world type of an environment. You want to see live action. Doing it into an animated form, now you're talking about making a straight-to-home video movie, blah, blah, blah. Plus, there's a lot more money to be made in the theaters with live action than there would be for an animated thing. I think a lot of people would complain if their favorite video game franchise only got an animated, and I know that sounds disrespectful to the medium of animation, and I don't mean it to sound that way, but I think that's how a lot of people would view it. They would see that their favorite properties, their favorite IP is getting disrespected because it's only getting a cartoon thing of it. Not the right way to look at it, but I think that's the way a lot of people would look at it. So I think most people want to envision what would look like in live action. I think there's more money to be made there. I think it would be more taken more seriously if it's done that way. So that's one thing. By the way, can I mention something? Let me see if I can get this here on screen. Not totally sure I can, but maybe I can. Maybe I can. So there's this mindset going around right now that, especially with the Avatar thing, that you can't possibly do Avatar correctly unless you have the creators of the show. Like Netflix can't do Avatar unless you have the creators of the Avatar show doing it. If you don't have the creators of the Avatar show doing it, then it can't be done right. Well, I mean, this guy would like to have a conversation with you about that. You think Stan Lee had any creative control over the MCU, over Endgame, over Deadpool, over Avengers, over Civil War? Do you think Stan Lee had any creative control over that? No. Did that mean the MCU was doomed to fail? No. Again, I'm not saying that Avatar is going to be awesome. Okay? Let's be clear about that. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying Avatar will 100% be better off without the Avatar creators. Not at all. I think all the things being equal, you want the Avatar creators there. But they're not. But I'm just saying to some of these people that I see writing online that might as well not even do it if you're not going to have the creators of the original show there. Really? Because we've seen lots of examples where the creator isn't involved in it and it still turns out great. I'm not saying it guarantees it's going to be great. I'm just saying let's not pretend like we don't have an extensive set of examples of when the creator wasn't involved in the incarnation of a live action thing and not have it turn out fantastic. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. A little something to keep in mind there. Anyway, that's my thought on the whole animation thing there, Jacob. All right, throat is getting sore. All right, an anonymous viewer writes, before you drive to Nevada to see a movie, I suggest you check out the theater if it will allow people from California in the theater. I would not be surprised if theaters check IDs to prevent outbreaks connected to their theaters. I don't think that's the case. I don't think they're checking state ID if you walk into a restaurant or whatever in these places. I think they'll just go, yes, we have our safety procedures. We think we feel good about it in this state, blah, blah. So I really don't think they're going to take the added step. I mean, you might be right, Anonymous. I could be wrong. My assumption right now, which could be wrong, my assumption right now is I doubt they're checking state IDs when you walk into a movie theater. I don't think they're going to be doing that. By the way, the other thing I'm going to check before driving to Nevada to try to see New Mutants, I'm going to check to see if a drive-in, because the drive-ins are open. I'm going to check to see if the drive-ins are going to be playing it. That'll be my first priority. If the drive-ins are playing it, I'll get my tickets to the drive-in. Otherwise, I may be making that drive out to Nevada. All right. Guys, I know I said I will get through all the questions today. My throat is becoming wrecked. We've been going for 2.5 hours now, talking straight. I don't know how much longer I can go, but let me see if I can push through a few more here. Khalil writes, hey, John, I get what you're saying about Disney Plus, but I do feel that they're so confident in movies like they did with Mulan because their subscriber numbers are apparently years ahead of what they projected. True, but that doesn't change the fundamental economics of it, right? That doesn't change the basic fundamental economics of it. So, yes, they are ahead of where they thought they would be. Absolutely. But they still have a long way to go. And the basic underlying economic realities are still there that they still have to keep in mind. So I see what you're saying, and I don't disagree. It's not like I'm saying, oh, the Disney Plus thing is a loss. I'm not saying that at all. Not at all. But I still think there are other realities they need to keep in mind as they're moving forward in this. All right, thanks a lot for saying that in, Khalil. All right, Alan Gonzalez writes, hello, John. Been a while, but I just wanted to say that I started watching all the Marvel movies, and oh my God, it's awesome to watch them one after another. It's a great experience that I shared with my kids that they never did, and they loved it. Dude, that's why when a lot of people will write to me and say, you know, oh, I've never watched such and such classic movie, I feel a little jealous. Particularly with movies like Godfather or Lord of the Rings. I get a lot of people write to me all the time saying, you know, I'm going to watch the Godfather movies for the first time next weekend. Or I've got my tickets to go watch the Lord of the Rings for the first time. I don't feel like, oh, how dare you not have watched those films? I actually feel jealous because you get to do something I will never be able to do again, which is watch those great movies for the first time. I'm never going to be able to do that again because I've already done it. So I can never repeat that experience, and you get it. And for you to be able to say, hey, man, I never actually got onto the whole MCU Marvel comic book movie thing, but I'm doing it now and I'm watching them bang them out one after the other. That's awesome, man. What a tremendous experience. And I'm glad you're able to share that with your kids as well. Thanks for sharing that with us. All right. I like the name. Bon Jovi. Bon Jovi writes, speaking of anime adaptations on the big screen, I remember one of my first thoughts after seeing Man of Steel for the first time being, damn, that's the best live action Dragon Ball movie I've ever seen. Hey, listen, I've heard other people say that as well. That by the way, there are people complain about, I've gone into it, I won't do it again. The action in Man of Steel is stellar. I think it's so broad in scope and it feels like the world is in danger, and I love it. You feel the weight of the conflict and the consequences of it. I think it's brilliant. But I've heard you're not the first person, Bon Jovi, to bring up to me that it kind of felt very Dragon Ball Z-ish. A lot of people mentioned that. They thought that if you ever properly did do a Dragon Ball Z thing in live action, that it would probably look very similar to that in tone and in style. So you're not the first person to bring that up. Well said. All right. TLCAZ writes, so, again, sorry guys, my voice is going here. I am binging The Misfits on Hulu. No wonder the actor who plays Klaus in Umbrella Academy is so good. He already played the same character for 5 seasons. I never saw Misfits. I didn't even know he was in Misfits. I didn't know that. So I've seen Misfits pop up on my like suggested list every once in a while, but I got to admit, I never got around to seeing it. So I didn't even know that dude, I love him as Klaus, by the way. He's fantastic as Klaus. I may have to go and check that show out now, TL. I may have to go check that out. Thank you for putting that on my radar. I appreciate that, dude. All right. Next up, James LH writes, hey, John, an anniversary upcoming on the 17th of August, 2018, I became a John Campea Show Patreon. Oh, thanks, man. Not looked back ever since. I really enjoy what you put together. Being Star Wars and Lord of the Rings fan is a bonus. Even like when you talk about sports. I don't watch sports I don't watch as I am sports fan. Probably might say as you're not a sports fan. Well, first of all, I think this is going to have to be the last question, guys. First of all, James, thank you so much. Number one, for being here and watching the show. Number two, thank you so much for being a Patreon supporter. It's amazing. We have a terrific Patreon community on our Facebook group for our Patreon supporters. So thank you very much for being there. And thank you very much for being there as a Patreon supporter for 2 years. Thank you so much for that. I really do appreciate it. And thank you for putting up with it when I talk about my other love, which is, of course, sports. I do like to talk about that once in a while. So yes, thank you for that. You know what? I will do one last question. Oh, it's also from James LH. And I apologize, guys, but we've gone over 2.5 hours. I don't have a co-host here today. It's been me talking straight for way too long. My voice is about to go. James LH writes, we always talk spectacular scenes, for example, MCU Thor arrival in Infinity War, Endgame portals. I mentioned seeing Return of the King last Sunday. To me, not much better than hearing the horns of Rohan, then the ride of the Rohirrim on the big screen. Again, no, listen, Lord of the Ring, while the MCU has done some fabulous work, with creating these big, bonkers moments that we watch and buy into and love, Lord of the Rings, let's not forget, has a lot of those moments as well. And that one in particular, when the sun rises, look to the east, that one in particular is like, oh my God. And then the camera pans back into the sky as you see the number of Rohirrim there are. It's so, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. I'm getting massive goosebumps right now just thinking about it. You're absolutely right about that, James. It's a fundamental moment in a movie that you watch on the big screen and you never forget. And you absolutely never forget. All right, listen. From Bojax, Daniel Haygood, Andrew, Happy Feet, Anonymous, and Nev Ad. Nevada. I know we only had like 5 more questions to go to finish off today. I'm done. I'm sorry. I apologize, but I'm done. I can't go anymore. I will get to your questions first on tomorrow's open mic. So we're going to do our regular Saturday open mic. And as we do, your questions will be the very first ones we answer. And I apologize. I said at the beginning we go through all of them today, but I've run out of gas. I'm sorry, guys. My apologies. So we will get to those ones tomorrow. Guys, listen, thank you so much for being here and making, even though it wasn't a regular episode of the John Campea Show today, thank you so much for coming and hanging out just as we did an open mic. I had a lot of fun doing this. Special thanks to all you guys who sent in those questions, because 2 things. Number 1, you gave us great fun things to talk about. And number 2, you supported the channel while you did it. And all of us here involved in the channel, thank you very much for that. Guys, thanks for making this a part of your day. Remember, guys, please do the 4 main things. Stay smart, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and please take care of the people around you. That'll do it for me for today, guys. Thanks a lot for being here. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.